Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became a blood-wielding hemomancer and chose darkness, drawing Fu, Mabui and Ryazetsu into his despair-bound harem. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Hope. The word rings throughout the echoes of human time. Belief that as long as you hold on your expectations and desires will happen eventually. Yes, despite how bad things get, as long as there is hope, then anything is possible. How many humans relied upon this concept to get them through a day of work, a troubling marriage, a mission gone wrong, a war upon the horizon? How many humans relied upon hope to keep them going? Yes, humans needed hope. Hey, how hilarious. Human beings always so mighty and cocky when the world offered what they desired. Yet, once the world said no, once the world reject their little attitudes they reduced themselves to crying out to their makeshift idol gods, and praying those false gods of wood, bronze, iron, fire, water, and any other element that they could set their sights upon, hoping for an answer to why the world would not recognize them. Yes, humans needed hope, because humans were nothing but sniveling, groveling, miserable weaklings. Same to their makeshift gods and idols. Cowards. Weaklings. Pathetic bags of blood and flesh. The lot of them. Their hope was their own ridiculous powerlessness to change the circumstances which warped around them on their own. When that hope faded, it became despair. Despair. It has many names. Fear, hopelessness, loss, defeatism, misery, depression, and desperation to cut the list of many. The belief that there is no hope, no way to live, no answer to the situation. Yes, despair was the dark side of hope. Humans live in despair as much as they live in hope. It will not get better. I have nothing to live for. We're finished. We're doomed. Only death awaits us. Am I going to die? Such statements have resounded since time immemorial. From the first creature which plucked itself from Earth's body, the faint smell of despair was upon it. That creeping feeling of death and decay, that darkness where the light of hope could not reach. Many had visited both sides of this coin. Many would continue to visit both sides of this coin. For in hope, there is despair. For in despair, there is hope. One person learned this very well. His screams were heard as a whip clashed with his young skin. One person learned of the power of hope. The security it brings to all beneath its embrace. Even as he was called unholy titles by those of his home, he had held on to the hope that one day, someday, any day, they might let him become one of them. He would have the hope of friends. He would have the hope of family in this place. Even as a spiked collar was placed on his neck, and iron chains were clasped on his hands, he had tried to hold on to the hope of the will of fire. He tried hard. He tried so very hard. Please believe him, he tried. He really did try. He tried to hold into the hope that they would stop. He tried to hold on to the hope that they would place value in him. He tried to hold on to the hope that they would trust him. He tried to hold on to the hope that they would love him. As he was hung from a meat hook, stripped bare by those around him, he coughed when he was released. His body splashed in a barrel of salt water. The salt burned at the open wounds upon his skin. Yes, he tried to be like the Hokage. He tried to be hopeful. He tried to be understanding. He tried to be forgiving. He tried to love them. Forgive them, Naruto. They don't know what they're doing. They are only afraid. What about him? He was afraid too. Didn't he get to earn the right to be afraid? They seemed perfectly aware of what they were doing. Whether from the water, from the pain, or from the need to escape, he could feel himself passing out. He could feel it coming again. He could feel the light leaving. He could feel the weight of darkness upon him. They will never accept me. This will never stop. I can't get away. Despair. He flipped the coin which laid at his feet. He screamed as he felt a strike of the whip against his wet skin. Each strike came after another drop into salted water. Each strike, he walked further and further into the darkness. Each drop into cold, freezing or boiling, hot water led him away from the warm glow of light he had tried so hard to stay in. Was he going to die? He certainly felt like it when he felt the sting of hot iron on his body. Minutes must have passed like seconds. Everything seemed like a warped sense of bright colors, pain, and mumbled words. He couldn't even remember if he kept screaming. All he remembered was that his vision was getting darker. His body couldn't move and he was sure that he smelled something bad. Everything was going dark. Why don't I have a mom and dad? I know what you've told me before. About how the Kyuubi ran amok. But I want to know about my parents. Who were my parents? What kind of people were they? There is no use asking about that. It won't bring the dead back. 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 He remembered those words that the Sandaime spoke to him. His body grew colder and colder. He could see a pool of blood, his blood running across the ground next to the trash cans in the alleyways. It was him, that boy's name who's taboo. He has no parents we can complain to. Alone, forgotten, worthless, sinner, wretch, vile, repulsive, monster, demon. He remembered these names. He had been forced to wear them for up to now. He had been forced to endure their weight. He had been forced to endure their burden. Upon the ground of the village he had been forced to tread upon, he could feel the small beats of his heart. Each beat slower than the last one. He, Uzumaki Naruto, container of the Kyuubi no Yoko, was dying. Naruto wheezed, but movement he could not produce. His body had stopped responding. Along with his body, all hope of salvation was gone. He was going to die in an alleyway among the garbage just like those of the village wanted him to. He would die a nobody, just like those of the village wanted him to. Happy birthday, me, I'm N, ow, 10. Naruto thought. Though his body could not move, he could feel the wet tears stain his face and then the ground. Why was he here? Why did he have to continue walking this ground only to be trampled at each and every turn? Why did Kami no answer his prayers? Was he not good enough? Was he not a good child? Had all of humanity and heaven forsaken him? They are only grieving, my boy. They have lost important people to them. Please just give them time and they will come around. Just have hope. Hope, 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 hope. Naruto hated that word. Have hope. Have hope. He laid on the ground surrounded by garbage because of hope. He believed in the will of fire because of hope. He saw his blood watering the ground because of hope. What good was hope, when he was about to die getting it? Give them time. They will come around. No, if he survived, they had run out of time. If he survived, he didn't care if they ever came around. If he survived, he would give them more to grieve over. He would make them watch as their children laid upon the garbage just like he had. They had lost important people. Well, there would be no point asking about that. It wouldn't bring the dead back. Their so-called will of fire. He would snuff it out. They wanted a monster. Then he would give them the best damn monster they would ever get. If he survived, he would make damn sure that they would not, even if he had dragged them to the underworld along with him. Naruto heard something sniff his body. He could not move, but he saw a lone, tiny dog sniffing his slowly dying corpse. Perhaps it was wondering if it could eat him or not. He didn't know, it did what it had to do to survive. Just like him. With what little energy Naruto had left, he waited until the dog was within the inner corners of his body. Once it was close enough, Naruto's hand grabbed its neck. He could feel his strength fading. He was dying. Yet, he did not let go. Even as the dog squealed and barked in pain, he did not let go. For if he let go, then he would surely die. He could feel its fur. He could feel the way it moved. He could feel the rush of endorphins rushing through its body. He could feel the adrenaline. Even as his blood seeped into the ground, he could feel the lifeblood of the animal in his grasp. Though he had no way of knowing, Naruto's eyes shined with unrelenting murderous intent. He would keep on living. He was not going to die. Not like this. Though he could feel his body slipping, he squeezed and squeezed. They wanted a monster. They would all receive monster. Abandoned by Kami. Abandoned by his own village. He did not need them. He did not need anyone. He didn't need their hope. He didn't need their forgiveness. He didn't need their acceptance. He didn't need their respect. All he needed. Crack. He watched as he snapped the dog's neck. It fell to the ground, dead. He saw the red wine of its body slither towards him. Yes, all he needed from them, all he needed, was to crush their hope, like they crushed his. Naruto opened his tongue and the life fluids from the deceased animal rolled across it. Upon this blood, he swore. He swore no more hope. He swore no more mercy. He swore no more chances. The blood swished and swirled upon his taste buds. Feast he did. No hope here. He would never be accepted, but that was okay. He gulped more and more until the blood filled his mouth and he swallowed it. His fingers twitched when the blood wrapped around them. He clenched his hands. His vision hazy, he did not see the blood float in the air. Bubbles levitated as if responding to his growing rage. The scars upon his back slowly healed themselves. The iron marks which steamed his skin faded away into nothingness. Blood solidified around his hands and nails. Red claws stabbed into the ground while he dug up the dirt from beneath him. A red mist swirled violently around him, clashing and striking the walls of the alley. He slashed bags and bags of garbage. The mist-decorated stripes of his blonde hair granting them a sinister glow of red. Very well, Konoha. You would ask for Uzumaki Naruto to become a monster. Then he would become on, just for you, and anyone else who got in his way. The blonde tried to stand, but his nigh-death experience had severely taken its toll upon his body. He dropped to his knees and darkness overcame him. He never saw the remaining blood from the dog he had just killed seep into the very cells of his body, taking residence in its new host. Morning arose. October 11th, the day after the night the Kyuubi no Yoko laid waste to Konohagakure and Hiro, the Yondaime Hokage, had stopped the beast by sacrificing himself. That day, and Naruto's birthday, were yesterday. People began opening their shops and stores, each greeting each other with warm expressions and happy tidings. However, in the dark alleyway, Naruto opened his eyes. He picked himself up from the garbage and shook his head. Memories of yesterday filled his mind, and with them so did his hatred for Konoha and her inhabitants. He stared into the sun-kissed streets. He watched families, strangers, and villagers roam their homes. His ire grew more and more upon seeing their happy faces. He could feel his blood boiling in response to his anger. Yet, he gave pause for one moment. He could hear a drum. He could hear loud, deep drums. Some far, and others near. He also smelled the scent of blood. He watched one person pass the alley and it was as if the loud drum had beat in front of him before fading away. This drum, it was just like his own. He could hear the beat of hearts. Each person who passed him by, he could see the rhythmic flow of the organic muscle which powered their blood flow. He took a step back. He could even see the hearts of the shinobi who dashed overhead. Was he going crazy? He had to be. He watched the hearts dash overhead. Naruto gasped and fell back to the ground. He turned around and he noticed the life he had taken. He stared down at the dog. That's right, he was dying and, to live he murdered the animal in front of him. The taste of blood was still upon his lips. He nearly felt like shivering. Every vessel of blood in his body, he could feel them circulating. He needed to get out of here. He needed to get home. He needed to think. He winced as he covered his nose. I need a shower. The trash was my bed last night, he said to himself. He walked out. Instantly, looks of disgust, hatred, and anger were upon him. Yet, for the first time, he stared back at them just as angrily. He could see them. He could hear them. The people's hearts beat with anxiety. Their once smooth rhythm had completely been thrown into disarray upon his presence. Yet, he pushed on and out of their way. Not yet. He did not forget his vow. Not yet. He just had to wait. He raced home and closed his door. He took off his clothes, not caring if they littered the floor, and stepped into his bath. Hot water drenched over him. He laid his hands on the wall. What's happening to me? He asked himself. Every injury, all the pain he remembered enduring, not a single scratch remained upon his skin. It was as if his blood had repaired any and all damage inflicted upon him. He remembered the strikes from the whip. Gone. He remembered the feel of hot iron. Gone. He remembered the punches, the kicks, and, though he felt very sore, there were no bruises to be noticed. He was nearly dead when he had been left by the civilians. Perhaps he was crazy. Perhaps he had received one strike too many, but he turned off his shower, walked into his kitchen, grabbed a knife, and walked back into the bathroom. He placed his hand on the counter and held the knife over it. He found himself short on breath. He could feel his blood moving like 1,000 insects inside his body. What am I doing? I gotta be losing my mind. Naruto thought. The young boy gave a slight curse, and pricked his left hand's index finger with the sharp utensil. He watched the red sea of life surface from his fingertips. He stared at it as if he expected it to explode in his face. It did not do so. Instead, he watched it slowly extend itself as if connected via a long string. His eyes widened and he backed away from the counter. He watched in stunned awe. All the injuries he held before, and all of the pain he felt before, this had never happened to him. The beat of hearts, the smell of blood, the sight of the heart pounding. Naruto could see it all. Where blood traveled, he was able to watch it. That had not been a lie. Yet, he did not yell aloud about this sudden power. He did not have visions of crushing Uchiha Sasuke in school. He did not have dreams of the Sandaime Hokage looking depressed while the blonde wore his hat. No, he did not dream these things. Everyone who hurt him, everyone who tortured him, everyone who beat him, he could think of nothing but yesterday. How he would have liked nothing more than watch the dirt streets drink the blood of civilians, just as they had made him do. He had nearly died yesterday, but old Naruto died yesterday, the one who was full of dreams of acceptance and a dream of becoming Hokage. None of that mattered. What did matter was that Naruto was absolutely angry. Yet now, he had a way to defend himself. He had a way to fight back. He had a way to make them very afraid of him. Naruto turned back to the blood and he noticed it hardened. As if in response to his anger, the blood grew sharp and thin like a very small needle. A deep breath from the blonde and he watched it become a formless liquid again. Now, how do I make you go away? Naruto wondered. No sooner than him asking, the blood slowly withdrew back into the cut he had made and his finger was healed as if he had never been stabbed in the first place. Naruto stared at his finger for minutes. It was only because of the clock in his room that he broke his trance. It was time for school. The very thought made the young boy even angrier. Yes, time for school. As if being humiliated and beaten wasn't enough. No, he did not need them. Not Mizuki. Not Suzume. Not Iruka. He needed none of them. Naruto filled up one of his backpacks with supplies and dashed out of the door. He didn't know where he was going, but it was much better than ever going to school. Screw them. Screw the lot of them. He'd be lucky if the teachers didn't decide to jump him. Uchiha Sasuke. Present. Uzumaki Naruto. There was no response from anyone as a classroom of children looked at one of the lone seats and they shook their heads. Iruka-sensei, Naruto's not here. He hasn't shown up to any of his classes, a girl replied. Iruka wanted to smack his clipboard against his forehead. Of course he wasn't in class again. Honestly, the Chunin teacher was beginning to wonder if the blonde just actively didn't want to graduate. He pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled. Alright, does anyone know where he is? Iruka asked. Hey, probably doing his stupid pranks again. Iruka-sensei, can we just start the lesson? Who cares if he graduates? A loser like that's never gonna be a good ninja, another classmate replied. Iruka frowned for a moment. Alright then, Takeda, while I go look for Naruto, why don't you write a 2,000-word essay for me on what makes a good ninja on the blackboard? That way Naruto won't be a loser. See, I knew you always looked out for your classmates, Iruka said. The look of horror on his student's face made Iruka smirk. Sometimes, being the teacher was worth the headaches. Iruka then walked to the door and opened it. I'm going to look for Naruto. Mizuki will be covering for me with the rest of you. He said. He heard the class give the most depressed compliance to his statement ever. With a shake of his head, the Chunin left to go locate the troublesome blonde in question. Naruto dropped his bag on the grass in a forested area. Knowing his luck, Iruka was already searching for him to drag him back to the rest of his pathetic classmates. The thought made him want to gag. Yet, as big pains in the ass his classmates were, that was not why he didn't go. He wanted to know more about what was happening to him. He could still hear the beat of hearts. Not of humans, but of animals, insects, and other creatures which walked the earth. Not a single human soul was among them aside from him. Right now, the world was his testing ground. Naruto watched a small bird land on a tree branch. He wondered, did the bird ever have hope? Did it wonder what it would be doing in the next 10 minutes? 12 hours. He did not know, but if it did, then he would take its hope away. Just as his had been taken. Memories of yesterday filled his mind. He clenched his fists. He could see the blood in the bird swirling. Naturally, the winged beast expressed discomfort. It flapped its wings, but whatever hold Naruto had on it did not lessen. He watched it squirm on the tree branch before falling to the ground. Naruto walked over to it. The bird chirped painfully, yet this offered no empathy from the blonde. None was ever shown to him. He watched the blood swirl around violently inside the bird. It seemed close to bursting. Naruto did not notice how red his eyes became. Yet, how did he pull it out? How did he make use of it? An idea popped into his head. He imagined the blade of that he had cut his finger with. Its sharp point, its steel body, and its deadly edge. Almost instantly, even Naruto was surprised when the bird screeched as red blade exploded from its body. It chirped its last. Kneeling down, the young boy placed his hand near the blood. What had made him become like this? He did not know. He watched the blood turn from as hard as steel to as flat as liquid once again. It did the same thing as his blood from before. He took a step back. The blood bent to his will and pulled itself out of its former host. He stepped about 2 feet from the body. The blood merely floated in the air. He moved his hand to the right. It swished to the right. He moved his hand left. It swished to the left. Now, how was he supposed to bring it closer to him? Maybe if I do this, he thought, and he drew his hand back. He watched the blood float towards him until it was right in his face. His eyes gleamed. For over an hour, Naruto practiced this ability. As odd as it was, and as creepy as blood could get, he made it form various shapes and sizes. Yet, the thing he practiced the most was how to weaponize it. It didn't seem too hard to manipulate. Whatever he wanted it to be, it could be. If he wanted it to be as sharp as a spear, then it could be. If he wanted it to be a ball, then it could be. Admittedly, it required a lot of focus from him to do this. Never mind making something completed like an iron-spiked club. Trying to imagine a ball with thousands of spikes quickly gave him a headache. He stared at his feet. He had killed 3 deer, 5 more birds, 10 rats, and about 3 snakes. The culmination of their deaths had led to a large quantity of floating blood. What Naruto also noticed was that just trying to keep it floating was hard as well, but that was fine. He stared at the large massive orb in front of him. He was starting to get a headache, but he didn't want to drop it yet. He glanced at a tree and held his hand. He imagined a spike, the widest spike with the sharpest point. Yes, it was a definite headache, but he could feel the blood hardening as he swung his hand down. Naruto watched the spear crush the trees and ground in front of him, most likely startling any other animals in the area. He panted as he rubbed his temples. Okay. No more training. Bad headache, Naruto said to himself. He walked over to the destroyed tree branch. Not the best speak in the world, but it passed for what it needed to. As much as Naruto didn't like it, he would have to do some reading. Just the thought of forming anything he could made him smirk, and what better place to look than books. Suddenly, Naruto paused. He could hear it. He could hear the rhythmic beats of a human heart. He looked back at the spike of blood he had made. He sucked his teeth. He held out his hand. He asked for it to withdraw into him. Almost immediately, the spike turned into a pool and then twirled itself around his flesh. He watched his skin absorb it almost naturally. All of the animals he had killed, their life fluid was his for the taking. If he could master this, no one in the village would dare mess with him again. In fact, he could do worse to the village. He snorted, but now he had to turn his attention to the one rushing towards him. Naruto, I knew I'd find you here. The blonde scowled. Great. One of the last people he wanted to see. He turned around and he noticed Iruka stepping into the clearing. Perhaps it was time now for a new training spot. Hello Iruka-sensei, to what do I owe the unwanted displeasure of your company? Naruto asked. Iruka wasn't sure what made him shiver. Whether it was his young student's entire tone, or his hateful gaze upon him. However, the teacher angrily marched towards him. You're late for school. Don't even think about ditching again. He said. TCH. Right. Cause you all are so interested in my education. I'm not going back to spending my time wasting away at a desk. Let me guess. You want me to go back so you and the rest of the teachers can make your not obvious snide comments about me. Or maybe you want to make fun of me while I spar with my classmates. Naruto asked. Iruka did not speak. He had been too stunned at the words which came out of his student's mouth. The look of sheer anger and resentment in his young body caused the Chunin worry, and Naruto easily noticed this. He gave a mirthless laugh. Yeah, you think I didn't know Iruka-sensei? You think I didn't know that you hated me? You think I didn't know that you wanted me to die just like everyone else? Always pretending you cared about me. Always pretending you were helping me. Well, I don't need your damn help. What did I even do to you all to suffer like this? Tell me, Naruto shouted. Iruka stiffened. Naruto, the blonde could see it. Iruka's heart was pounding. He could see the rush of blood. He could see his heart beating at least twice as fast. Yet, the man's mouth remained shut. The blonde growled. Each and every last one of you. Telling me to forgive. Well, I'm sick of forgiving. Don't you worry, Iruka-sensei, I'll do us both the greatest favor we deserve. Any interaction I have with you is the bare minimum. Naruto finished. Iruka still didn't say anything. Naruto walked past him and picked up his things. He then gave a small grin. Alright, Iruka-sensei, if you and the entire village want a monster, then I'll make sure you all get one. Turnabout is fair play, as they say. I tried being the good guy. You all didn't seem to like that. You all destroyed my hope of ever being accepted, but I'm not a vengeful person. I'll make sure to live up to your hopes, by becoming what you all wanted, he said and walked off. Iruka turned around and watched Naruto's form disappear. He would have to quickly notify the Hokage of this immediately. He couldn't handle the shudder which flew across his spine. It felt as if a swirl of malice was headed for the village, in the form of a 10-year-old. Naruto re-entered the village, his mood ruined. He did not bother with the glares nor whispers sent his way. Spineless, worthless, pathetic, sniveling cowards. All of them. He didn't need to bother with. A sharp pain hit his head. Naruto touched his forehead and noticed drops of blood at his fingertips. On the ground, at his feet, was a small stone. Every single last person, all of you could. Who threw that? Naruto asked. He did not receive a response. He didn't need one. He stared at them all. All the hate was quickly centered around him. He picked up the stone. Alright, since we're all out of honesty, I'll just pick who I think did it, Naruto said. He wasted no time before flung the stone into a woman's face just above her eyelid. This made her scream as she covered her face. People looked on in shock at her pain, but the moment they turned to look at Naruto, he was gone. Naruto closed the door to his home behind him. He dropped a pile of books he pilfered from the library. He doubted they would miss them anyway. Yet, he would not read them now. He hoped to save them for later when he could make this headache go away. Whether it was from the training, Iruka, or that stupid somebody who threw a stone at him, he wasn't sure. What he was sure of was that he needed some rest. He climbed into his bed and closed his eyes. He heard the small pattering of feet. Naruto opened one of his eyes and he saw a rat scurrying about his floor. His pupils glowed with a sinister red light. He could feel his consciousness slipping, but he didn't seem to mind it so much. In fact, he welcomed it. He embraced it. He glossed over the intruder. That rat, what was it thinking about? Did it want to find food? Was it taking care of its young ones? Did it just want to find a scrap of food to bring back to its potential newborn baby? What did it hope to achieve? Well, that didn't matter. He held out his hand. After all, hope was a stupid, false reality anyway. A grin marred his face, yet, there was no radiant joy to be found there. He grinned when he heard the rat squeak in pain as the blonde clenched his hand into a fist. The rat squeaked from the unknown pains which plagued it until dozens of spike-shaped blood blades exploded from its body, killing it instantly. It washed his floor as Naruto fell asleep. Yes, hope was a lie. It was a lie Naruto was going to teach everyone. Especially you, Konoha. Naruto opened his eyes to notice how dark it was. Having slept from the morning and into the night time, he took off the sheets of his bed. Once his feet touched the floor, he looked down at the rat he killed. Unfortunately, the blood dried up and it took considerable effort for him to absorb it than if it had been more liquid-shaped. Actually, it might be a better idea if I left a little mess around here. I've got countless subjects to work on, Naruto remarked. He smiled at the thought. Yeah, that seemed to be right up his alley. Then, once he was done with the tiny vermin, he could move on to bigger, more adult vermin. He looked at his clock. It was much later than he had thought. 3 hours past midnight. He didn't remember being that tired. Well, no matter. It wasn't like he had too many plans for the day. He walked from his bedroom and into his hallway on the way to his living room. The blonde recalled his words to his former teacher. No doubt Iruka was already spewing his stupid tale of the encounter he had with Naruto to the Hokage. To be honest, the young man was kind of surprised he woke up with no one knocking on his door proclaiming that the Sandaime would like to speak with him. To be honest, that was something Naruto wanted, but the longer they waited, that was fine by him. It merely gave him more time to plan things out. Now, some might be thinking Uzumaki Naruto and planning should never be uttered in the same sentence, but when you have lived nearly all your life becoming the object of people's pathetic hatred, you learn to plan the safe routes home on the more intense days. Of course, the occasional high-end prank never failed with planning either. At the very least, his useless former self had something to boast about. However, Naruto also wasn't stupid. He knew no matter how much he hated Konoha, and no matter how much he wished to make each and every single person suffer as he had, he was not strong enough to fight even a Chunin confidently. All he had for fighting experience was his worthless training regimens with his former classmates. He shook his head with a grumble. No doubt they were happy he was gone. TCH, they'll be the first to learn. Then they can tell their stupid parents how they got their asses kicked by me, Naruto thought, but that wasn't enough. He pulled out a chair and sat in it. The light of a lone ceiling fan shined over him. He sat in silence, thinking, wondering, planning. True, he would have to get better at more intricate planning, but the grander scheme of things was mere child's play. He held out his hand. Was he always going to have to keep cutting himself to bring out this ability? That didn't appeal to him in the slightest. In time, he watched the blood slowly drip down his finger. He willed it to the center of his palm. It followed his desire. He watched it form a ball no bigger than a marble. He picked up one of the books he had pilfered and opened it to a random page. He started reading. As he read, Naruto tried finding ways to maximize his split attention. As far as he was concerned, reading was too boring to take seriously. He doubted that would ever change with him, but, realizing how important he ought to take it, he decided to try having his mind on the blood and the book at the same time. While he read, he formed random shapes with the blood in his palm. It quickly relieved the boredom. He felt like he learned some pretty interesting things as well. Nothing worth pointing out, but at the very least he did see some appeal in reading. Once Naruto was finished reading, or until the boredom became too much, he closed the book and dropped the blood on the table. He noticed how dark it was. It certainly didn't look like any blood he had seen before. Was it because of all the blood he had been accumulating? He had taken the blood of more than a dozen animals, and he had been carelessly adding it to his own. For some reason, this didn't seem like it was diseased blood. The thought of an animal carrying a contagion was on his mind, but only for a moment. He doubted that was the case. Even if it was the case, he always did recover from illnesses rather fast, he noticed. He stiffened for a moment. He gave a small grin. Now there was an idea. He quickly got up and ran into his bedroom. Not even a minute later, he came back into his living room area with the dead rat he had killed. He laid it on the table. Expelling a bit more blood from his body, he held out his hand. He tried to thin the blood as much as possible. He hoped he could make it as free as a length of rope, but it was definitely hard. He tried to slowly maneuver the blood back through the wounds of the rat. Maybe he could move its body as if it were still among the living. He cursed as he tried to squint his eyes over the wound, but it proved too difficult and the blood splattered on the table. Naruto gave a slow pant. Great, he thought to himself. Well, at least he found another thing beyond him at this point. Still, it was an idea that held value. He'd have to work on that later. Before long, the sun shined in Naruto's face. He turned towards his blinds. He then glanced at his clock. He had been awake for nearly 3 hours. He stretched, and leaned back into his chair. Thoughts of how he would spend the day flew through his head. He had to admit, even if it was pathetically boring, at least school forced the time to go by. Then again, it wasn't like there wasn't anything he couldn't do. For now, he could feel the immense quantities of blood circulating through his body. To be honest, he didn't even know how he was containing all of it, but perhaps he could chalk that up to the powers themselves. To be honest, he now realized he should have wrote some things down. For what was one way Konoha thrived? The obvious one: money, missions, clients. He would take all of them. The only issue was how. Try as he might, Naruto didn't know a thing about money and business. Well, he knew a little bit about savings and interest, but anything beyond that was not in his field. Though, he was beginning to have some intense motivation to learn. He just needed someplace to start. A knock came to his door. The blonde smirked. A day late, but who was counting? Certainly not him. He stood up from his chair and headed for the door. He could see the heart behind it. No doubt the heart to a grown man or woman. He could see the blood flow. A sigh, He opened the door. What do you want? Naruto asked, his voice dripping with disdain. Hokage-sama has called for you, brat. Get moving. The Chunin said. Naruto's mouth thinned. The man seemed rather unsettled by something. The only reason the blonde could tell was because the Chunin's heart suddenly increased in pace. The blonde sucked his teeth. Very good. You know how to act like a carrier pigeon. Well, you delivered your message. Now get away from my door before you start leaving droppings near it like a real one. In other words, how about you get lost? Naruto asked before slamming his door. He walked back into the inner reaches of his apartment. It mattered not to him if the one behind the door was about to get angry. Hey, weren't shinobi supposed to have better control over their emotions? What amazing quality Konoha produced. In any case, now was the time for him to go see the main source of his anger. The one who filled his head with stupid dreams, stupid hopes, and stupid futures which he no longer desired. Still, this was the Hokage after all. No matter how old, he was stronger than Naruto and the blonde knew it. He quickly got himself dressed and stood on the outer deck of his apartment. He stared down at the masses below. Their smiling faces were utterly sickening. The price he always paid, for them to have those stupid grins was infuriating. If he had his way. When he had his way, he would make sure that none of them even dared form a smile around him. He jumped off the railing and into the streets. His hands in his pockets, he marched for the Hokage mansion. He stopped for no one. Even when he felt the glares upon him, but, for once, he was actually happy for them. No one in this damn village deserved to be happy. Hiruzen Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, wore monikers such as, the God of Shinobi, and the Professor, with great pride. For in him laid the foundations of pinnacle shinobi prowess, and nearly insurmountable years of wisdom in both physical battles, and political battles. A firm believer in the will of fire which had been passed down to him from the Nadaime and Shadaime, Hiruzen had always tried to work in the best of interests of everyone. Even if they were not always successful, he always believed it was for the greater good. When Iruka had come to him yesterday telling him of the things Uzumaki Naruto had told him, he had grown worried. Naturally, they sounded like idle threats, but with this specific situation the Hokage wished to not take any chances. The only reason he had not called forth Naruto yesterday to discuss these claims was because he had a council meeting which needed to be addressed. If they were not, he had feared that the boy he came to grow attached to would be lost forever. A knock came to his door which pulled him from his work. Enter, he said. He watched Naruto enter the room. The boy seemed well as far as Sarutobi could tell, but he was concerned when Naruto did not greet him with his usual boisterous smile. In fact, dare Hiruzen say that the blonde looked very upset. What do you want, Gigi? Naruto asked, his tone filled with dismissal and unconcern. Hiruzen frowned for a moment, but cleared his throat. Naruto was never one for respecting authority, so perhaps he shouldn't have been surprised. He only wished that hopefully the boy would show the proper respect to his superiors down the line. The Sandaime placed down his writing materials, and pushed his papers to the side. Ah, Naruto, my boy. A bit of a grumpy mood you're in. Do not worry, I've not called you here for any trouble that you've caused, surprisingly. No, I wanted some things clarified that I heard from one of your teachers, Iruka Yumino. Hiruzen said. He noticed Naruto was not surprised by this. Naruto rolled his shoulders and nodded. Seeing this, Hiruzen nodded as well. First and perhaps the most important question, you said you would become what Konoha wanted you to be. What is that? He asked. It's no longer what I will be, Gigi. It's what I am, a monster. More specifically, I am Konoha's monster. I can tell from the way your heart just skipped a beat that you're surprised. I don't blame you. Why would the lovable, gullible, stubborn, idiotic, dreamer Naruto want such a thing? Naruto asked. Hiruzen clenched his hands. Naruto stepped around the room for a moment. He had to be careful with this. 5 or 6 hearts laid in hidden platforms above him. He had been through one ideal experience. He didn't need another one. Plus, he was sure he didn't have enough control over this ability to take on people like the Anbu. He did have to admit, if only briefly, this felt cool. It's because, Gigi, I've had enough of your way and your excuses. You always told me to resist the names they called me. You're not a demon, Naruto. Just ignore them, Naruto. They will see eventually, Naruto. I remember each and every single suggestion you gave me. Well, they don't seem to be seeing anything. It's also kind of hard to ignore nearly dying. Happy birthday to me, right? Naruto asked. Hiruzen's blood ran cold, and the blonde could tell. He tried to keep the grin off his face. He even wondered if he succeeded. But I finally get it, Gigi. What they've been selling me. I finally bought it. Why go against the crowd? It's a pointless waste of time and energy. It's much easier to just accept what I am rather than trying to fight. Tell me, Gigi, if I'm really not a demon, then why does everyone call me that? Here's your chance, Naruto said. Hiruzen was not prepared for this. He wanted Naruto to have a childhood. He wanted the younger generation to not fear the boy, so he had forbade any mention of him or his status to the adult population. However, this did not stop parents from informing their children to not interact with the boy. Even now, hearing that the boy, on the day of his birth, had suffered a nigh-death experience made Hiruzen understand that he had truly underestimated the hatred which festered within the hearts of his people. Now he was watching those consequences grow. Yet, he could not tell him. He couldn't tell the blonde yet. He wasn't ready. I'm sorry, Naruto, but you can't think that way. I know it's been hard, but you can't let hatred overwhelm them. Please, try to forgive them. Please, try to have hope. Hiruzen begged. The smile on Naruto's face disappeared. He dropped his hands to his side. The folds of his hair shadowed his eyes. Those words. What was the meaning of those words? Forgiveness. Hope. He had lost and forsaken such terms. A man, one of the most powerful in the world, would continue to beg him to suffer to appease the masses. Naruto trembled. He wanted to rage. He wanted to explode, but no words or emotion came out of him. It was as if his hatred had been blanketed by the shock and disgust of what had just been proposed to him. Hiruzen breathed a sigh. I know it's hard, Naruto-kun. I swear I will find the men and women responsible for what happened to you, and they will be dealt with accordingly. Wasn't it your dream to become Hokage? To become the greater than any of the Hokage who had come before? Even me. Will you turn your back on your dream? Hiruzen asked. Turn his back on his dream. Dreams. Dreams. How dare this decrepit withered fool talk to him about his dreams? Yes, he had those dreams. Now where did they leave him? Broken, ruined, cursed, and stepped on by the people he thought he would give his life protecting. What about his dreams of acceptance? What about his hopes for recognition? What about No, he swore. He, goddamn, swore. He did not need anything they had to offer him. Anything Konoha gave, he would return tenfold. Anyone who mocked him, anyone who spoke ill of him, anyone who hurt him, anyone who got in his way, he would crush them like they wanted to be crushed. A monster they wanted, and what does a monster do best? It devours everything in its way. Before it, everything else is food. You speak of dreams, Gigi. Why would I want to be the Hokage of the bunch of spineless, talentless, worthless, delusional, second-rate garbage that makes up this village? In fact, why should I even become a shinobi in your ranks? That would be my duty, right? To protect Konoha and all her inhabitants. Well, you all haven't been really welcoming of my help, so I don't see the need to ever provide it. In fact, when I'm 16 I should just leave. I think that would be good not just for me, but for all of you. Give me one reason. Give me one damn good reason that I should continue to strive for the acceptance of this stupid village, Gigi. Give me one good reason that I should continue to treat everyone here with love when I get none. Naruto snarled. Hiruzen said nothing for a moment. He then closed his eyes and took a puff of smoke. Naruto was right, and Hiruzen had only one possible reason. He released a breath. It's what your parents would have wanted, my boy, the Sandaime said. He stared into Naruto's eyes, pleading. This was not the right reason. The Sandaime, and the Anbu which protected him, wondered if they were seeing an illusion when the young blonde balled his fists. He clenched them hard enough for blood to spill. However, he took a slow breath and released his anger. Wait, perhaps he could turn this situation to his benefit. He knew he wasn't thinking clearly. Konoha had controlled him enough. He didn't need to give them any more. Granted, at this point, he would rather his parents watch as the streets of their village ran red with the blood of all inside, but the Hokage didn't know that. First rule of a prankster: if it's expected, then it's not worth doing. Parents. That's a good one, Gigi. And why should I care about what my parents want? It's pointless to ask about that type of thing. It won't bring the dead back, right? I'm just following your advice, the blonde said. He could see the Hokage's heart slow a beat for a moment. He inwardly smirked. So, there was definitely something going on here that he wasn't aware of. He just had to find out what it was. For himself, Hiruzen nearly felt shame cover his face. He had never thought that his words would come back in his face in this manner. He had only wished to spare the boy more suffering if he was told how great his parents were. Now, it seemed as if he had disregarded their existences entirely. It was dangerous, but Sarutobi had to rectify that. Naruto-kun, you are right. I did say that. You must understand. Your father had great enemies. They were very powerful. I can't tell you. It's to protect you, Hiruzen remarked. Now this made Naruto curious. So, Daddy Dearest was not only someone strong, but he was also someone who garnered the growing hatred of other people. He hoped he could remember to write that down when he got home. Protect me. So far, Gigi, I don't feel very protected. I said give me a good reason, not a worse one. Naruto replied. Hiruzen had to smile at that. Of course, Naruto would want to know more about his parents. What 10-year-old orphan wouldn't want that? Very well, Naruto-kun, then how about this? Go back to the academy, graduate, and become a chunin. If you can do that, then I will tell you about your parents, the Sandaime said. Naruto scoffed. In the confines of his mind. HMPH, make him work for something he should have known by now. Oh, don't you worry, you senile old bastard. Naruto would play your game for right now, but only because he was starting to find a place to start with all of this. Still, he had played the fool for the past 4 years of his life. What was a couple more? At the very least it would throw suspicion off him, for the moment, but if the Hokage was as pathetic as Naruto was starting to believe, then he would actually do what the blonde was thinking he would. Really? After all this time you'd just give it up like that, Gigi? You've gotta be playing me, Datbeo. Naruto said in what he hoped was his naive voice. Something told him he'd need to start practicing that, as irritating as it was. He watched Sarutobi smile at him. He wondered how many people he lied to with that smile. Of course, Naruto-kun. It's no trick. I can assure you of that. Haven't I always kept my word to you, Naruto-kun? He asked. Naruto did not answer that. Oh, he knew the answer to that was no, but he'd settle for the unsure path. Right. Whatever you say, Gigi. Fine, I'll be the best damn chunin you ever saw. Naruto boasted. This quickly made Hiruzen happy. As far as this monster talk was concerned, Sarutobi just hoped that it was another one of the young boy's pranks which would bowl over soon. That was what the Hokage hoped for at least. Naruto waved goodbye and stepped out of the doorway. Hiruzen waved goodbye, yet, he couldn't help this foreboding feeling festering. Where was this anxiety coming from? He intertwined his fingers. Bring me Anbu agent, Neko. X. Once Naruto closed the door to the Hokage's office, he began to make his way down the stairs. A smile plastered itself upon his face. Just as he thought, one of the hearts which had been in the ceiling was already on the move. It seemed it was going to an unknown place in the east, but Naruto was hardly in a position to follow. That was fine. Let the Hokage make whatever preparations he could. It wouldn't matter in the end. Naruto entered the lower administration's room of the Hokage mansion. There, he spotted the secretary. Well, not really a secretary, but close enough. A chunin if he had recalled correctly. He smirked. Old Naruto would never have thought to do this, but this Naruto, oh, he was more than willing to try. Ohio, Setsuna-chan. Naruto beamed happily. The chunin glanced up from her work and scowled. She snorted before moving back to the paperwork that she needed to sign. This didn't put the blonde off. Such hardworking, loyal, devout women were so hard to find these days. He could appreciate those remaining studious. After all, he liked to think he was hardworking as well. Ah, I see you're busy. Well, I won't keep you long. I was just wondering if you could pick me up some books on business management. You see, I'd get them myself, but the librarians don't like me very much. Think you can do that? Naruto asked. The woman growled before she spared him a hateful gaze. I have more important matters to attend to than wasting my time on someone like you. Get someone else to get your books for you. Now get away from me. You're distracting me, she said. Naruto scratched his cheek. He then held his head down with a dejected sigh and faced the door. Oh well, what was he expecting? He pushed open the door and turned around. By the way, Setsuna-chan. How is your husband Kentaro-san? I can't tell whether you guys like to roleplay or not, but if Kentaro-san is making you call him Takashi, then I think you guys need some space. Then again, there is also the Takashi who also lives right next to me. Is he making you into a singer or something? Because I remember hearing a lot of sounds next door to me. I'll be sure to let Kentaro-san know about your new music career, the blonde said and closed the door. Setsuna's blood ran cold. No, Takashi had sworn he put up a seal for privacy. How could the brat have known? No, she couldn't let her husband find out. Their marriage had been growing stale for a while and, curse her weakness, Takashi had just rolled some sweet words on her. And, the one who had to hear them was the boy. Ever since a mission a while back, Kentaro hadn't been able to perform for a while and she had gotten frustrated. Horror spread across her face. She stood up from her chair and rushed out the door, to find Naruto leaning against the wall. I knew you'd see things my way. Just drop them off at my house. Also, tell Kentaro-san I said hello. Naruto said before stuffing his hands in his pockets and walking off. Wait, is that all? I just have to do this for you and you'll leave me alone? She asked. Naruto faced her. She felt a shiver run down at his smile. Then there was the snicker which escaped his lips. He fully faced her. Leave you alone? After only one chore? You mean like you left me alone after only one name calling? Or one comment by my absent parents? Dear sweet Setsuna-chan, I would suggest you get comfortable. You and I are going to be very intimate friends from now on. That's just the first of many assignments I'll give you. I wonder what your husband would say if he could see you now, Naruto responded. Setsuna scowled. You damn brat. You really are a monster after all, she said. He did not respond to her. He only widened the smile on his face upon her statement. Oh yes, this was going to be an interesting time. But for now, he would go back to the academy next week. No point in giving Iruka some false sense of hope that what Naruto had said was a lie. So, with that being done, he went back into the forest and trained with his ability for the next 6 to 7 hours. Yes, many animals suffered, but they were definitely put to a good cause, well, his good cause anyway. He also exercised as much as he could. Out of curiosity, he had wanted to see how much blood he had obtained so far. Needless to say, but that nearly gave him a headache and another death experience if he hadn't taken it all back. It was quite the quantity. Still, He would need more to practice with, but he couldn't go around just killing all the animals. Plus the rats which littered the apartments and homes of people wasn't nearly enough for him. Now people was a different story, but he hadn't tried his abilities on a person just yet. But there was no need to rush. He had created at least several weapons from books. Now, if only he could create them faster. He would need to if he was going to do battle with them efficiently. He wrote this down in his notebook. Granted, he tried drawing illustrations, but even he could admit that his art skills were repulsive. Yet, he persisted regardless. Not like anyone else would be seeing this notebook anyway. He would have practiced for longer, but he noticed he was entertaining a guest. He could tell because he could sense the heartbeat about 10 to 15 trees away. Luckily he had decided to take a water break, so he doubted the person saw anything. Unfortunately, he couldn't get a good look at them since it would most likely give his position away, but he could feel it. Their blood. It was strong. He wasn't sure how he could tell, but it oozed stronger than he had thought any blood could. It gave off a near overpowering aroma, but he did not yield. Whoever the blood was connected to, they were very strong. So strong in fact that he wanted them on his side. Such rich blood meant that the person was fit, such hiding tactics meant that they were a shinobi, and a good one at that. I bet Gigi sent them. Not like I didn't expect him to. Now, I can get started, Naruto thought to himself. You see, during his training period, Naruto had learned something. He had learned something that made him his face nearly tear in two. It almost made him blackmailing little Setsuna-chan almost not worth anything. Almost. He picked up his things and exited the forest area he had been training in. Who says pranking doesn't have real-world applications? He could feel the person still behind him. He hoped he didn't give anything away. After all, he had more things to test out. Having an unknowing partner was going to be more fun than he previously envisioned. He climbed up the stairs of his apartment and grinned when he saw a pile of books in a bag just in front of his door. Good girl, Setsuna-chan, Naruto thought. He grabbed the pile of books and walked into his house. Once he closed the door, he quickly turned around and faced it. Now he could look without being seen. It was a woman based on the outline of her blood flow. The blood curved around hips that shouldn't be there for a male ninja. Plus, the blood smelled of a feminine aroma. Weird. Yes. Useful. Absolutely. Though judging strength level was beyond him, but from what he could gather, it wasn't a chunin. He had been chased by chunin level shinobi before and, dealing with mostly Konoha chunin, he had a good tell of the chakra of a chunin shinobi. This was beyond that. Now, onto the next phase of his plan. Azuki Yugao sighed as she watched Naruto's apartment from about 5 rooftops away. She never doubted the word of her Hokage, but the most dangerous thing about the boy in front of her was his mere tendency to kill animals. So, in essence, it was nothing to be concerned about. She didn't know why she was here serving surveillance over him. So the kid got a little hissy fit. Given his current living arrangements, it wasn't out of the ordinary for him to be angry. In addition, she sympathized with him in some areas, but suffering was the way of human life. Nothing would change that. She released a breath. She hoped he would leave his house soon. She needed to have it investigated and searched as quick as possible. While she doubted she was going to find some S-rank jutsu scrolls or a message detailing information from some other village, it was good practice for a stakeout. She had a feeling this would be happening for a while. Yugao stiffened when she saw Naruto open his door. He gave a wide stretch of his arms before he walked away from his apartment. Well, that's convenient, but I won't look a gift horse in the mouth, she said. Standing to her feet, she closed the distance to his apartment. She didn't know how long he would be gone. True, she could knock him out before he could blink, but why take the risk? Once she was sure the boy was gone, Azuki Yugao stood on the railing of his outside platform. She noticed his glass window door. She grabbed the handle. She was surprised she heard the door slide open. His door's unlocked. I figured the kid would have a higher case for self-preservation, she thought. She stepped inside and silently closed the door behind her. The female Anbu was rather surprised to see how clean his room was, for a boy. Not too many clothes laying around the floor, no dirty laundry, no inappropriate reading material on the bookshelves. All in all, a fairly normal-looking room. Among other things, she thought. She didn't see any harm in it, so she took off her mask and breathed a tad. Her purple hair straightened itself out. She knelt underneath his bed and set up a small audio recorder with audio enhancement. Sorry Naruto, but this was for the good of Konoha. Unfortunately, your privacy wasn't a factor. After setting up a small camera near his closet, she opened the door which led from his bedroom and into his hallway. Her eyes moved with expert precision befitting a top-ranking kunoichi of Konohagakure. Yugao placed mics and cameras in his bathroom, hallway, and dining room area. Now, all she had to do was the living room area. She stepped into the living room area. As soon as she stepped into the living room, she gave pause. Why did she feel tense? She had watched the blonde leave his room more than 20 minutes ago. So why did she feel a bead of sweat drop down her back? It was as if the room breathed rage and resentment. She wondered if she had been taking too many missions and needed to request some time off. Hopefully, Hayate would appreciate some alone time with her. Yet, as she worked, Yugao couldn't rid herself of the feeling that she was being watched. She'd turn around only to see rats scurry the blonde's floor before running once they were aware she spotted them. Ugh, what's wrong with me? It's just a kid's apartment. What am I worried about? She asked before setting up the last camera with installed audio recorder. Great, now she could get out of here. The silence in the living room was becoming unnerving. It was like the very air had died around her. Yugao was snapped out of her thoughts when she heard a shout. What the hell? Who are you? What are you doing in my apartment? She stiffened and turned around to see her target staring at her in shock. Time seemed so slow to her. What was happening? How didn't she hear him come in? Nothing should have been able to sneak up on her so easily. Plus, he got a clear look at her face. She sucked her teeth. Sorry Naruto, but I'm going to make sure you never remember this encounter. She thought. In an instant, the Anbu slammed Naruto against the wall, her hand around his throat. The young blonde coughed and gagged as he grabbed her arm. She hoped to make him lose enough air to pass out, but his kicks and flailing were getting annoying. Suddenly, she flinched in pain when she looked down at her gloved hand. The material had been cut open and so had her skin. She watched her hand bleed. She dropped the blonde and backed away for a moment. She stared at her bleeding hand, yet, it didn't flow like she expected it to. She watched it slowly rise into the air. She took a step back, her legs shaky. You know, Anbu Nichan, it's bad to walk into people's homes without permission Dadbayo. Now, why don't you tell me what you were doing in here? Naruto asked. Yugao gave no response. She could feel her chest burning, and she could feel her vision fading. She glanced up and was struck by horror when she saw Naruto's arm coating in red blood, her blood. It fashioned itself into the form of a blade. Her blood dripped from his fingers. Hokage-sama had to be warned. Ah, the silent treatment. Well, no worries. I'm a former prankster after all. I have fun ways of making even Anbu talk. We're going to be good friends, Anbu Nichan. The best friends ever. Naruto said and she watched him lick her blood from his hands. Yugao stilled. It was as if pure thunder had been sent through her body. All strength left her form and she found the room tilting to the left. It tilted so much that she felt pain when her head slammed into his floor. Her eyes wide, she watched him stand over her. With the last of her vision, she watched him take her bleeding hand. Are you scared? Good. Because whatever hope you have in escaping me, I will destroy it. Just as, he paused and touched her wound with his lips. Her vision became an abyss of nothingness. Her body numb. Konoha destroyed mine. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Hayate Gecko sighed as he finished eating his anniversary dinner, alone. He thought Yugao had time off so that they could spend the day together. Granted, he supposed that Anbu life was much more tedious than anyone could initially think. He understood it was a very taxing job which required the full attention of all shinobi underneath its banner, but he remembered a week ago that Yugao had said she would be able to request time off. That had been 3 days ago. He knew she was having a short mission watching over Uzumaki Naruto, but he didn't think she would be taking it so seriously as to forget their anniversary. He supposed he would be spending another day alone. He missed his girlfriend. Hey, I'm sure she's fine. She can handle herself. I should know. She reminds me of it constantly, he said to himself. Well, wherever she was working, he at least prayed for her safety. He then walked over to the candles and blew them out. No point in burning the house down tonight. Hayate started putting the dishes back in the refrigerator when he heard a knock on their apartment door. Rather surprised to hear from anyone at this hour, he headed for the door, a kunai behind his back just for precaution. He opened the door. Hello? He asked. There was no one present. Only the cold air served as his companion. Hayate glanced around until he looked down. He noticed a box at the doorstep. It was sent to him, but there was no return address. He blinked, but carefully picked up the package and took it inside. Now, naturally, Shinobi protocol was determined that all suspicious cargo be examined before entering the home, but it was cold out. Plus, he was a Tokubetsu Jonin. Not much could scare him anyway. He placed the box on their living room table. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he walked into the kitchen and made himself a cup of coffee. The Jonin then returned to the living room. He sat on his lovable green couch and took the box in his hands. Alright, let's see what we have here, Hayate said. He cut open the box. He removed all of the needless protective wrap. He was surprised to find a cassette tape along with a headset, included microphone. Hayate picked them both up and noticed a card. He placed them to the side and picked up the card. To Hayate-kun. Sorry I couldn't make it to our anniversary. But I thought I'd send you something. Turn on the headset, tune it to the instructions below, and watch the video. Happy anniversary, Hayate. Signed, your moonflower. Hayate read the card. He gave a light chuckle, but placed the card to the side. He never knew Yugao to be so forward, but it was refreshing during such times. He knew she hadn't forgotten. He turned on their television and picked up the tape. With a shaky breath, he pushed the tape into the video cassette recorder. The television turned blank for a moment. Hayate felt his heart pounding. However, whatever joy or pleasure it was hoping for was utterly crushed when he widened his eyes. He noticed Yugao, in her Anbu uniform, standing in the middle of a dark room. The only light was the light of a table. What is your name? A dark, distorted voice asked her. Yugao did not speak for a moment. She held her head up and Hayate noticed that within her once beautiful orbs, was sheer nothingness. He dropped the remote from his hands. Whether he even heard hit the floor was anyone's guess. Azuki Kashima Yugao, my lord. She said. Hayate stiffened. He was not sure what he was supposed to be feeling. His face twisted in a mixture of anger and sadness. Stop. Stop it. He pleaded for it to stop. The voice chuckled. Hey. Very good. And tell me, what is your affiliation? The voice asked. Hayate's blood ran cold. He watched Yugao touch her shoulder, the place of her Anbu mark. No, Yugao. You couldn't. If you did, then the penalty would be death. Please, don't do this, Yugao. Hi. I am an Anbu of Konohagakure no Sato. Height. 5.5 feet. Weight. 111 pounds. Blood type. A. Shinobi specialties. Kenjutsu, and sensory ability. Shinobi registration. 012161. She said. Hayate fell to his knees. What? What was going on? Yugao would never betray Konoha. It was her home. What was happening? Was he going insane? He He had to be. And why don't you tell us one of Konoha's greatest secrets? You know, the one we learned about 2 days ago after all your struggling. Let's learn together. The voice said excitedly. Yet, Hayate had no way of knowing given how incoherent it was. Hayate watched Yugao seemingly struggle. She tried to keep her mouth shut and he noticed it. However, the words flowed from her mouth like fine wine. Uzumaki Naruto is the holder of the Kyuubi no Yoko, the Biju which laid waste to Konoha 10 years ago, she said. Hayate held his head down in disbelief. It was as if his entire world had come crumbling into the ground. Yugao, his beloved, had just broken one of the most treasured secrets throughout Konoha's history. He wanted to cry. He grit his teeth in anger. Whomever this person was, he was going to make them pay for this. But first, he had to warn the Hokage that they had been compromised. A juicy piece of information. We can make use of this. What would you beloved Hayate think if he saw you, betraying your family, home, and countrymen? How disgraceful of you, an Anbu of Konoha, the voice mocked her right in front of his eyes. Hayate shook with utter rage, but he was surprised when life returned to Yugao's eyes. She panted heavily. Hayate, get to Hokage-sama. You have to warn him. Konoha has been compromised by an. Arg. Hayate watched Yugao clutch her chest. She dropped to her knees and her consciousness faded away. Now, Yugao-chan, you know what happens to Anbu Nichans who don't follow directions. Now then, let's see what Mr. Lung Disease has to say, the voice said. The video cut right then. The recorder ejected the videotape. Hayate sat on his couch confused. He didn't know what to do. Yugao was in danger. She had been compromised. She had been controlled. What was he going to tell the Hokage? He had no idea. Suddenly, the static in his headset became apparent. Enjoying your anniversary gift, Hayate Gecko. I know I had a fun time making it. Tell me, would you give the movie a 10 out of 10? A garbled and warped voice asked through his earmuffs. Hayate growled, but he took a deep calming breath. If you touch her, I'll cut you into so many pieces that not even the insects and disgusting creatures of the earth will be able to finish you off. Please, let her go. Hayate begged. He sat on his couch. There was no noise over the headset. There was no static, there wasn't even the sound of breathing. There was only an unnerving quietness, and a tense pressure. The voice laughed. Wow, and here I thought Konoha didn't care about its people. Goes to show what I know. First a threat, and then begging. A player doesn't get to do that, Hayate-san. Especially not one like you with your condition, the voice replied. Hayate clenched his fist so hard his nails drew blood from his skin. You kidnapped a Konoha shinobi, an Anbu, and you interrogated her within the village's walls. When I go to the Hokage, there will be no place for you to hide, for you to run. Are you really so overconfident that you would risk such a thing? Hayate asked. He waited for a couple more minutes. You bring up a valid point, but I have a few problems with your little scenario. 1. You assume I want to leave Konoha. 2. You assume I let you go to the Hokage. 3. You assume I interrogated her within village walls. As for would I risk such a thing, well, let's just say that I've had enough of the way Konoha does things. I think Izuki-san agrees with me, the voice, now suddenly female, spoke. Hayate shivered, but held his head down. What are you hoping to accomplish? What do you want? Hayate asked. There came more silence. But it didn't take long for him to hear a light, warped chuckle. What do I want? Oh, that's easy, Hayate-san. I want to watch Konoha burn to the ground. Truth be told, I wouldn't mind if all the elemental nations burned to the ground. Because I have a feeling that the things I have seen and experienced wouldn't make a difference no matter the village I was in. But, I know you wouldn't want that, the voice said. Hayate stood up. What are you talking about? Is this some kind of sick game? Some test? He demanded. Yet, the voice was hardly displeased. Hell, he could tell from the tone that the voice, though still unidentifiable, wasn't even concerned. No, I wouldn't call this that. Tell me, Hayate, which would you rather save? Your girlfriend, or your village? Note, this is a trick question. See, you're going to run some errands for me. You're a Tokubetsu Jonin, so no one's going to question you on. No, I will not play your games. Once I speak with Hokage-sama, you will be mailed your beloved Yugao's head in a box. If you want that, then go to the Hokage, go to your friends, family, or any Konoha citizen willing to listen. I will know about it. Ignore my instructions, she dies. Fail to complete your objective, she dies. Talk to anyone about what was said here, she dies. I'll keep in touch. Oh, and keep the video, as a memento. The sound of the connection was cut. Hayate took off his headset and placed his head in his hands. How could today have gone so wrong? Hayate nearly wanted to break down and cry. What was he supposed to do? What would the Hokage say? What could be done? Naruto breathed a sigh and took off his headset. Okay. Note to self, the evil mysterious voice is much harder than it looks. Try again for later, he said to himself and leaned back in his wooden chair. He stared at his bed and there laid Yugao Azuki, the Anbu who had invaded his room. Now one might be asking, where did the sudden acting skills come up from the blonde? This had appeared out of nowhere. Well, it had to do with what Naruto told Yugao just before he had paralyzed her with his blood. He had spoken of a new ability he learned while he had been training. Whether all of his animal victims were dead by the time he took their blood, or perhaps he just didn't pay attention, he had the limited ability of controlling thought and action of those he stole blood from. Granted, he learned this wasn't perfect because just subduing the Anbu agent had nearly made him pass out from a severe headache. He understood that his mental fortitude would have to be stronger. Naruto remembered he sucked the wound of a bird he had caught. It took some effort, but he was able to make the bird bring him things such as berries, other animals, and even some flowers, which he crushed into nothingness later. But, the most handy attribute to this was that, he got to view the past experiences of those he drank the blood from. There was just a small catch: for clear memories, his victim would need to be alive. He had done it with a dead rat and an alive rat. The dead rat's memories were very foggy, if he needed a term. The alive ones were much clearer, if still disgusting for a rat. He had to say, shifting through an Anbu's memory was not as fun as he imagined it would be, but what a surprise laid in store for him. For 2 days ago, he had learned that he was the holder of the Kyuubi no Yoko, the nine-tailed demon fox. So, the story that's the oh-so-big secret kept from me. So everyone hates me because I have a demonic fox inside me. I feel like there is some cruel irony here I'm missing, but I'll let it go, Naruto said. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Well, not that this changed anything. If that was the reason he had suffered beneath their hands, then it did not matter. He didn't know why the fox attacked the village, and he didn't much care. If Konoha couldn't see past its own hatred, then that was their problem, and he would make them suffer for it. He turned back to his guest. Truth be told, Naruto wasn't planning to kill Yugao, maybe ever. Okay, perhaps until she outlived whatever usefulness he could squeeze out of her, but he doubted that would be nearly any time soon. Yet, trying to control an Anbu was not easy. He was slightly surprised she had broken out of his control for that split moment, but he had quickly reined her in. Turns out that ruling over humans was harder than ruling over animals. His will had to be stronger than the person he was attempting to control. He had to imagine that it was only because she was distraught to get her message out that he had overcome her. If she had been more calm, he might not have been able to stop her, at least for about 20 seconds before he paralyzed her blood with his own again. Truth be told, Naruto didn't have anything against Hayate specifically. If anything, Naruto could categorize the people he interacted with into 2 categories. People either outright hated him to the point of physical, mental, and emotional assault, or people ignored him and believed he just didn't exist. Hayate was probably the latter if he could remember. However, from Yugao's memories, he was a close friend of at least 3 people who had marked him with branding iron. He still did not forget that pain. But, he did find some rather juicy things about them both that he could use. Yet, this would have to wait. He was tired. So, he climbed into bed and closed his eyes. The moon shined in the sky over Konohagakure. Yet, with its radiance came the shadow of darkness which loomed over the village. The morning came and Naruto opened his eyes. He stiffened when he saw a blade just inches from his throat. He blinked. This again, Nei-chan. You do realize that if you kill me then the Kyuubi will be unleashed, right? Good luck explaining that to Gigi, Naruto said before pushing the sword out of his face. He stared into the eyes of a visibly angry Yugao. Her eyes screamed for his death, yet, she could not end his life. Her body would not follow her will to plunge her blade into her village's betrayer. Every time she tried, it was as if her blood screamed at her and insurmountable pain would flourish through her body. It felt like her body was on fire every time she tried to combat him. Now one might be thinking, Yugao, he hadn't bound you. You could escape and he didn't have the expertise to stop you. True, but not quite. She did not know what he had done, but she remembered trying to escape the first time. A headache had come upon her so badly it had made her pass out. She figured she couldn't leave unless he gave her the command to. In addition, he had effectively silenced her. Any mention of his name, status, intentions, or even clever phrases to anyone but him would trigger this headache instantly. She tried being crafty too. She tried writing it out on paper, but her body would cramp up or her heart would suddenly stop until her desire was erased. She even tried making a clone. It didn't make it 2 steps to the door. Essentially, she was trapped in every way, shape, and form. Yet, nothing was more damaged than her pride because she had been captured by an academy student. You won't keep this up. I'll find a way to get out of this. When I do, Hokage-sama will detain you and the Kyuubi will be removed. She said. She backed away and allowed him to get to his feet. He stood up and cracked his neck. That's what you're hoping for, right? Word of advice. Hope gets you nothing. But I'm gonna show you that. Just like how all of you showed me. Besides, you're still doing your assigned mission. You're watching me. Only now, I know about it. Naruto said. Yugao did not know what he meant, but it sounded rather unsettling. She clenched her sword. Hayate will stop you. Whatever you told him won't work. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, Uzumaki Naruto, but you picked the wrong person. The purple-haired Anbu stated. Yet, she found herself seething when the blonde utterly laughed at her. He clutched his stomach and nearly fell over in his giggling fit. He wiped a tear from his eye. Is that what you think? That I picked the wrong person? Yugao Ni-chan, you seem to forget. I know a lot about Hayate Gecko from you. I think I picked the right person. You know what I think. I think Hayate is going to try to kill you, Naruto remarked. Yugao stiffened. Her lover would try to kill her. What kind of baseless confidence was that? You are just a boy. I wouldn't expect you to know how the world operates. Hayate would never betray me. He's stronger than you think he is. She said. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. He opened his closet and placed on his orange jacket. A change of clothes were in order here. Stronger, weaker, it doesn't really matter, does it? Just like you, me, and everyone else, he's human. Though I'm constantly told I'm otherwise. Actually, let's make a deal, Naruto said. A deal? She asked. She decided to tread carefully around this. It could very well backfire on her. Though he had detained her in a mysterious fashion, Yugao highly doubted that the blonde possessed the necessary intelligence to outwit an Anbu agent. Yeah, a deal. I bet Hayate betrays you, and tries to kill you, even more specific, on the old man's orders. No, even better, on the council's orders. No matter how much you plead or beg, he will choose his mission over you, Naruto said. If Hayate could protect the village from me, then I would praise him for it. All threats to Konoha must be eliminated, she replied to him. Naruto gave pause to this for a moment. He toyed with the idea in his head before he motioned for her to follow him. She found herself moving. They entered the hallway. The Kyuubi was a threat, but I guess it wasn't eliminated now, was it? No, it's just sealed inside me. Which makes me wonder why. I know for what reason, but I don't know why. Having a almighty demon would make a village very strong, but I wonder why me specifically. So, you made yourself wrong, Nichan. You're right, all threats to Konoha must be eliminated, that they can't control, Naruto remarked. Yugao frowned, but she kept moving with him. If you win and he does listen to you, then I'll stop every single thought going in my head and I'll turn myself into Gigi. If I win, you are mine. You obey anything I say. No matter what it is, he said. Yugao dropped her hands to her side. Naruto could see her eyes not focusing on him. Her mind must have been rapidly going through every possibility. And if I don't play along? She asked. Naruto smirked. He had been waiting for that question. Rather obvious even to someone like me, he thought, but he cleared his throat. Well, if you don't play along, then your sick boyfriend is about to get much sicker. The host of the Kyuubi replied to the Anbu. Yugao shivered. She still had no idea how his abilities worked and she could not afford that risk. So she, begrudgingly, accepted. Naruto picked up some of his books in a backpack. Cool. Now obviously, I've still got assignments for you. Obviously, you can't come into contact with Hayate or this whole bet is for nothing. Let's see how long your hopes hold out then, Naruto remarked. She glanced off to the side. She didn't need to tell him that she accepted. Not like she had much choice in the matter. Well, I'm off to the academy. It's been about a week. Break my stuff, and I'll give you an even harder headache, he said as he closed the door. Yugao looked around his room. Why was she feeling anxious? Hayate wouldn't betray her, would he? Naruto scratched his cheek. To be honest, this was getting to be a bit harder than he had envisioned. Now the question was, what exactly was he going to do with Pawn 1 and Pawn 2? He was reluctant to send Yugao anywhere. Yes, he was a bit dense, but he was hardly stupid. Azuki Yugao was an Anbu. The best of the best. As soon as he let her go, she would try and find a way to escape. Granted, with the link of blood they shared, he would always know about it, but having to handle an Anbu was not as fantastic as he might have envisioned earlier. HNPH, well, at least the academy will give me some time to organize my thoughts. Plus, thanks to Anbu Nichan's memories, I can actually start practicing some actual fighting, and none of that garbage those stupid teachers brag about. Naruto thought. Yes, that worked well for him. Not like he would give the teachers the satisfaction of any more of his time. It didn't take long for him to reach the academy. He stared at the building for shinobi education. His face scrunched up in disgust. Great, now he had to reacquaint with them as well. Tisk, let's get this over with. With any luck, the rest of my sanity won't die as well, Naruto said to himself. He opened the academy door and stepped inside. Wow, it looks like you really can apply yourself when you try, Kiba-san. You got the question right. Good work, Mizuki said with a smile. He watched Kiba grin proudly. The Inuzuka then pumped his fist into the air before sitting down. The teacher shook his head before turning back to the blackboard. Mizuki coughed for silence. Very good. Now then, can anyone tell me the political implications that all 5 nations have together in economy? Mizuki asked. However, before anyone could answer him, the door was slid open and everyone gasped when they saw Naruto come through. He closed the entrance behind him. The teacher smiled. Ah, Naruto-kun, back from your week-long vacation from school, Not to mention you're nearly 20 minutes late. What do you have to say for yourself? Mizuki asked. Truth be told, The teacher was rather surprised to see his blonde student after the stories that Iruka had been telling him. From what he remembered hearing, the Hokage had begun quiet interrogation of the village populace for what happened on October 10th. Word of the boy's near death had spread throughout the shinobi populace. Did most care? No, not really. Naruto wasn't sure if that question was supposed to get a raise out of him or not, but from the small chuckles and snickers he heard from the peons that were his classmates, it might as well have been. He closed his eyes. He marched forward without a word. The class slowly quieted down when they saw the look anger on his face. It was clear to him, them, and Mizuki that Naruto was not here because he wanted to be. Well, partially on his part. There was merit to be found here, but they didn't need to know that. He spared his classroom a glance. Too many idiots to remember. Aside from the clan children, he disregarded everyone else. No, he didn't remember them because they were former friends. He only remembered them because their families would be some of the first who would experience what he had. He could feel everyone's eyes on him. Nara Shikamaru, Inuzuka Kiba, Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji, Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino, Uchiha Sasuke, and many others were staring at him. Wake upon on the wrong side of your bed, dead last. Ah, Naruto was wondering when the insults were going to start. Yes, Naruto was not in the mood. He wasn't strong enough, but he would be. Then he would make sure Akamaru kept his filthy dog on its leash. The blonde found an open seat and took his spot. He then turned his head towards the window. No one in the class was sure of what to say. It was the first time Uzumaki Naruto had not said a word to anyone. Not even to Sakura Haruno, the girl who people thought he had a crush on. Though, there were two reasons that he was not interacting with anyone. First, they could all die for all her cared. Second, he was shifting through the memories of Azuki Yugao. To be honest, Naruto was kind of surprised at the many things she did, or spoke about. He replayed her training sessions like a videotape. He watched her kick, punch, meditate, and perform the katas of her blade. He watched her fight high-ranking shinobi units. He watched her stealth into hidden bases. It was as if an entire shinobi's life was being played right in front of him. Naruto-kun, please pay attention. This could be on your test. Mizuki said. Naruto turned back to the board. He heard someone else snicker. He released a sigh and turned towards the board. Seeing this, Mizuki went back to writing and explaining the political war ground of the 5 nations. Naruto rose an eyebrow. Perhaps this could be more beneficial than he had previously led himself to believe. The political unrest of the 5 nations. Naturally, this sounded utterly boring to him, but the idea of this unrest being used against Konoha was too much to ignore. He started writing. Thanks to that, he had a good idea of where he could send his playthings. The bell for the class to be finished gave sound. Naruto smirked as he placed away his notepad. Hey, so, who would have thought that the academy of all places would give me my next move? Maybe you're right, Iruka. Maybe I can make use of the academy, Naruto said. The holder of the Kyuubi then noticed several shadows loom over him. He grumbled. Naruto, where have you been? You haven't shown up for about a week, came the voice of Shikamaru Nara. Naruto's mouth twitched. He noticed Inuzuka Kiba and Akamichi Choji looking at him as well. Not that it's any concern of yours, but I've been training. Now get out of my way. It's bad enough I have to share the same space as the rest of you Konoha trash. Don't pretend to be concerned about me. It doesn't benefit you, he replied. This got a laugh. Ha ha ha, you, training. What could you possibly hope to train on in a week? Tired of being the class clown? Or are you going for the Sasuke, route? Kiba asked. The Inuzuka heir held his stomach, but his canine companion did not feel the same. For Akamaru, the smell of blood which surrounded his friend's blonde classmate was very worrying. He whimpered. Naruto got just a tad angrier. His old self still popped up. The one that desired to defeat Sasuke at all costs, but he eased this emotion. He had something that Uchiha Sasuke would never have. He had information that Uchiha Sasuke would never have. For now, he was more than happy with the silent victories. Caring about Sasuke is stupid. Not to mention he's a waste of my time. In fact, all of you are a waste of my time. Especially those drooling piles of female hormones gawking at him. It's pathetic. Naruto answered. Kiba, Shikamaru, Choji, and nearly all the class heard his words. Uchiha Sasuke turned around and stared at the one who had spoken against him. The girls which surrounded the Uchiha turned their eyes to him in anger. Oi Naruto, don't badmouth. The blonde sucked his teeth. He didn't have time for this. He pushed past the others. However, he noticed Sasuke looking at him angrily. Naruto snorted and continued walking away. He didn't need to provoke Sasuke yet. If he could make plans for that emotional ball of mess, then no doubt he'd have more. Naruto stiffened when he felt a sharp blow to his head. Instantly, he learned that though he possessed nearly all information in Azuki Yugao's memories, his body had not. He had not been prepared for that blow, for he had not been in actual combat. Thus, he clenched his head in pain. Naruto, you idiot. Who do you think you are talking about Sasuke-kun like that? Apologize immediately, came another voice he was very familiar with. No, 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 no. The first one. The very first one he would break. The very first one he would crush. The very first one he would let suffer. Would be. Naruto turned around and stared at Haruno Sakura, proclaimed smartest girl in the academy. She came from a shinobi background as her parents were former shinobi. He still remembered the sight of her long pink hair. He remembered the days he tried to vie for her affection, her appreciation, her understanding, her love. If he could, he would go back and force himself to regret this action. He watched her stand over him, cracking her knuckles as she did so. Apologize? Naruto asked. The wood beneath his feet cracked, which made everyone take a step back. Naruto turned around and everyone gasped when Sakura doubled over in pain when his fist blew the wind from her lungs. Hinata Hyuga, former heiress of the Hyuga clan, widened her eyes. Kiba and Choji stood stunned. Shikamaru and nearly the whole class remained speechless. Ino took a slight step back. Everyone stood wondering, what happened to Naruto? You're right, Sakura. I should apologize. I should apologize to myself for wasting even 1 second on thoughts of having friends with anyone in this pathetic excuse for an academy. I should apologize to myself for putting up with your name calling, your snide remarks, and your petty grievances about your appearance. Get out of my face, Naruto said before he pushed her away and sent her into Ino's arms. Sakura's legs fumbled and she fell to the floor. The young blonde turned and saw the others looking at him. Tisk. Why am I wasting my time with any of you? Naruto asked. He continued walking through the room before he noticed Hyuga Hinata staring at him. She seemed to want to say something, but she kept his head down. The holder of the Kyuubi grunted before he moved out of her way. He headed for the door and closed it behind him. No, he wasn't worried that they would say something to the teachers, because he had mentally suggested them all to not do so. Granted, to do that to a call of about 12 to 15 kids was a very hard task. He had only been able to do it because everyone was too shocked to recover the mental fortitude needed to disregard his suggestions. They had been strong suggestions that what transpired should be ignored. Save for Ino helping Sakura to the nurse's office, it had worked. Though, I'm going to need to take a break. I almost released my hold on Yugao with that stunt. Nearly taking control of academy students is easier than controlling an Anbu. Gee, who would have thought that? Naruto figured. He understood that the reason he couldn't command the students was because he hadn't partaken of having their blood transfused with his own. He had intermixed a large quantity of his blood with Azuki Yugao's blood, which allowed him to take control of her much easier. He hadn't had the opportunity to do that with the rest of the class, but that did give him another idea for down the line. His mouth formed up. The academy ended and Naruto left before any of his classmates could catch up to him. The walk home was nothing to worry about. He took a deep breath and opened the door to his apartment. He walked in. No traps. As a former prankster, I was expecting that almost instantly, he thought. Then again, he was dealing with an Anbu. No doubt hers would be better than his. Traps, he meant. He walked into his room, and there he noticed Yugao sitting on the floor reading his business management books. She took notice of him and her expression turned sour instantly. Welcome home, my lord. Uzumaki Naruto. She quickly fixed. She hated welcoming him to anything, but it was mentally ingrained in her head currently. The blonde shrugged off his things. Whatever. Make sure all of your equipment works, and be sure to grab your mask. You're going out on a mission for me tonight, the blonde said instantly. Yugao wanted to deny that she would, but the burning of her blood quickly made her decision for her. She stood to her feet. Not going to ask me what I did today. She spat at him. However, he waved off her spite for his form. Yugao absolutely hated that she couldn't get him to show an emotion besides boredom. She wished she could make him angry so he could feel what she was feeling right now. Naruto took off his jacket. As long as you don't interfere with me and my plans, I don't care what you do. You're also talking a lot more compared to the past 4 days. Quit acting like I tortured you for the information. I don't even know the first thing about torture, he said. Azuki Yugao clenched her fists. Oh, she could teach him a thing or two about torture. Yet, she tried to do away with her thoughts of revenge. They only served to give her a headache. A very bad headache. Azuki Yugao watched Naruto sit on his bed and pull out books on business management. And what, pray tell, will I be doing for you? Want me to teach you about the birds and the bee, mmmph. Yugao mentally cursed when the blonde, with a wave of his hand, silenced her mouth. Honestly, she was starting to remind him of Sakura. Then again, he knew she was just trying to get on his nerves as she always did. Though he did hate that he blushed at what she was insinuating on teaching him. Not really. I got something more exciting for you than that. You'll be going to the red light district, Naruto told her. Yugao widened her eyes, but she merely stared at the blonde with disdain. Yet, he didn't mind. She could hate him for all eternity for all he cared. Plus, with her gone, he could get some practice done. Instead, she folded her arms and snorted. If she could burn him to ashes with her stare, then she would have done so. For Naruto, he just studied what he could. Slowly, the day passed away into night. Naruto made food for himself and for Yugao. Naturally, she didn't eat it voluntarily. Now being an orphan, Naruto did not appreciate wasteful supplies. Oh sure, he was messy, but you can bet your ass he always finished everything. So, he ordered Yugao to eat and she did. Besides, he didn't need her potentially failing his assignments on an empty stomach. Once that was done, Yugao started getting dressed in her Anbu attire. She picked up her sword and placed it in its sheath. Try as she might to resist, she couldn't stop herself from picking up her Anbu mask and putting it over her face. Cool, you look much better when you're not running your mouth. Though I think some people might say the same about me, Dadbayo. Naruto remarked before handing her another videotape like the one he had mailed to Hayate. You know what to do. Now, get to it. Oh, and be sure to let Gigi know how I'm doing. You're a very studious Anbu Nichan after all. Good luck, Naruto said as he opened the door. Yugao bit her lower lip, but she pocketed the videotape away and walked out of the door. She closed it and then locked it. Warn Hokage-sama. I've got to warn Hokage-sama, Yugao said. She stared in the direction of the Hokage mansion, but all of her struggling was pointless. She dashed in the direction of the red light district to complete her mission for her lord. She cursed with every hop across a rooftop she made. Meanwhile, Naruto took out his headset. He dialed in the frequency and smirked when he found the open channel that he needed. He silently cleared his throat. He decided to get some practicing done now while he started his next operation. Blood flowed from his hand and started creating various shapes and objects. "Hello Hayate-san, glad you kept your channel open," Naruto said, his voice working through the voice filter Yugao had made for him. This was not done by her will, of course. "Enough. What do you want?" Hayate asked with a sharp cough on the other line. Naruto grinned. He looked outside into the night of Konohagakure. His eyes shined in his window. Yugao frowned as she landed on the rooftop of another building. It had taken her nearly an hour to reach the red light district by travel of the roofs. She started down at the sleazy men and women who bought other men and women for provocative acts. She remembered coming to the red light district about 10 times. Each one was for a different reason that she would not be going into. None of them were for what some people might be thinking. Yet, she had to admit, whether good-natured people of Konoha liked to refuse it or not, it was true that the red light district controlled a sizable revenue of Konoha's wealth. Now, it wasn't enough to make anyone raise more than a couple of eyebrows, but it was hardly insignificant. The purple-haired Anbu wondered if that was why the Hokage had kept it around for so long. Perhaps the red light district had generated more funds for shinobi projects than generally more honest income did. Still, that didn't mean Yugao liked it. Especially, not for what she was here for now. She clutched the videotape in her pouch. How she wished she could destroy it right now, but it was beyond her will to do so. She screamed at her body to send her to the Hokage mansion, but it merely fell into the air. She dropped from the building she had been on and grabbed a hanging hotel railing. She dashed off of it and continued on her pathway. Her targeted building was still a couple of minutes away, but with any luck this would not take long. She almost wanted it to take long just to annoy her lord. Tisk. Damn, she hated calling him that. The female Anbu dashed overhead of the general populace and landed on a tall sleazy hotel. It looked like a love hotel of sorts, but it was kind of hard to tell with the blazing red lights in her face. She could see a couple of shinobi on the ground. By Naruto's orders, she could not go out and warn them. Instead, she hid her appearance from their view because they would have spotted her without a doubt, and an Anbu was not supposed to be seen so easily. Never did Yugao think she would need to infiltrate her own home. She scaled the wall with 2 kunai. True, she could have used chakra, but for precautionary measures she did not. She tried to drown out the noises of debauchery from her ears. TCH, stupid horny men and women. She climbed the walls effortlessly and appeared on top of the roof. She scanned the horizon. There were no immediate threats. She hoped there would never be as well. Hell, she didn't even know how the current threat to Konoha was controlling her at the moment. Her body kept moving and, about 3 rooftops away, she made it to her destination. There was a large structured brothel. It had guards stationed at nearly every corner. She remembered this place. Titled, The Red Dragon, it was a place of exclusivity and riches. Only some of the richest people in the village could get into that, and it was only by invitation. Naturally, this didn't impede the Hokage or authorized shinobi from entering on extreme business concerning national security, but who cared about that? She could see at least 15 places of exposure that she could take advantage of, but only about 5 of those would allow her to reach her targets. She released another breath and got on her way. If there was one thing she had going for her, then it was at least guards were notoriously bad at their job. It took her some maneuvering around the first 3 guards, at least without killing them, but it was manageable. She had done this before, so it wasn't like it was any different. She landed on one of the supporting walkway paths. She gave a silent apology when she knocked one of the guards out and placed him against the wall. She did the same to 5 others, but this allowed her to open the window and continue with the mission that had been assigned to her, and she did it with a snarl on her face. A game? And what is this supposed to prove? Hayate asked. Naruto sat in his chair and rocked it back and forth. He tried performing the one-handed sword techniques that Yugao had done from his memories of her training. He knew how she did it, and any nuances she made, but his body didn't, and it would have to get learning fast. Good thing was that, thanks to her memories, he had crafted a rather well-made blood sword. Well, if he did say so himself. That's right. A game, Hayate-san. You see, I know a lot about you. After all, I've had a good well of information to tell me about you. In fact, I have her on her first assignment right now, but enough about her. You see, Hayate-san, I remember I asked you, which one would you rather save? Your village, or your lover? Now, I know what you're thinking. You will save both. The will of fire will guide you to victory. A notion like that pisses me off more than anything else, Naruto said in his seat. He found he had gained some sort of control over his powers after bringing Yugao under heel. His abilities were much more fluid than before. He actually had an idea based off the time he saw Yugao try to create a clone to escape. What have you done to her? Hayate asked. However, Naruto ignored him for a moment. With Yugao's knowledge of human anatomy from her Anbu training, he had found that, thankfully, he didn't need to cut himself every time to draw his blood ability. He could just access it from the pores of his body. Disgusting, but effective. Who knows? But, I'll tell you this. I'll do worse to her if you don't complete your objective. Now, what is your objective, you might be asking? It's quite simple. Your objective is to help Yugao-chan escape. Naturally, this is the only time I'm going to let you both see each other, but the assignment I have her on is going to draw attention. She doesn't know that, Naruto said, his voice still filtered. Hayate clenched his earpiece. And why would I do that? Yugao, to my knowledge, has gone rogue. Why shouldn't I stop her? The man said. Naruto shook his head and sucked his teeth in quick succession. He found his creation rather appealing. He had created a clone of himself covered in blood. It looked exactly like him in every way, shape, and form. It blinked at him, but he did not mistake its malicious intent. He made it form a couple more weapons. He would to get used to switching the forms of all his creations where it suited him. Tisk tisk tisk, you don't seem to be getting Hayate-san. It's not about what you won't or shouldn't do. It's about what you will and should do. I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen if you do or don't help her. Just know that if you don't save her, a lot of your comrades are going to suffer for your choice. Happy choosing, Hayate-san. Naruto said before he disconnected the call. Hayate took the headset off and exhaled a tired sigh. Help Yugao escape. What was she doing currently that would need his help? But, if he didn't help her, then the people of Konoha would be in danger. But the question was, what were they going to be in danger from? If he helped Yugao, then he would be condemned as a traitor as well. If he helped his comrades, then what would happen to them? What would happen to Yugao? What was he supposed to do? Hayate took a deep breath and exhaled. Alright, calm down. Don't panic. Think about it carefully, Hayate remarked to himself. There had to be an avenue he wasn't looking at. Whoever this person was, he wanted Hayate to act rash. The Tokubetsu Jonin placed a finger to his chin. The assignment he has her on will draw attention. What does that mean? Is he talking about a show? It has to be something that will bring people to look at it, but that could be anywhere. Hayate thought. He quickly got up from the couch and moved to get dressed. No, wait a minute. That can't be anywhere. Strategically speaking, there are only 5, 6, 10 spots in Konoha that people could watch from nearly every angle in the village. I have to remember that he somehow forced Yugao to give him sensitive village information. He has to know about these spots as well. Would he be watching? He had to. He sounded like he was obsessed with this, so naturally anyone would want to see the culmination of their work. What am I missing? Hayate asked. He placed on his shinobi vest and tied his headband. He then looked out his window. The only problem is, I don't know what place he would target. He also didn't give me any information on how to get there. Unless, I'll know it along with everyone else. I'll have to help her escape under the cover of fire. I will just have to bid my time then, the ill-looking Jonin said to himself. He noticed a small bird on a tree branch in front of his house. It quickly flew away while he walked back into the lower rooms. The bird continued to fly until it reached Naruto's window. The blonde released his control over the flying animal and sighed. A smile was plastered on his face. Well, at least he's being the obedient little side project, he said before putting the headset away. It looked like he chose well in capturing Yugao when he could. The control he had taken over her had made his power much stronger, and he wouldn't lie and say it wasn't appreciated. Now, he supposed it was time to see how the next phase was going. Hello, Yugao-chan. Having a fun time? Naruto asked. He thought he heard her pant as she knocked out the last of the guards who was tasked with keeping their charge safe from harm. She landed on the floor of a luxurious carpet. She had indeed heard his telepathic call and she didn't like it. She glanced around the open room. Assortments of fine linen, gold, diamonds, and other precious stones littered the luxury room. The hue of red light created an intensely dark, yet arousing atmosphere, and dare Yugao say she could smell the sting of opium on her nose. Her open-toed boots felt the comfortable touch of tiger fur. Wide variety of alcoholic drinks, and questionable food choices laid upon trays of crystal and studded cabinets. What do you want? I'm busy doing your assignment, my lord. She spat at him, but again Naruto ignored her tone. There was plenty of time to correct that behavior when she made it home. Through her eyes, he watched her enter the Red Dragon owner's living quarters. Takamura Shingen was his name. The blonde cursed himself for the blush that flew across his face when he saw the man asleep with at least 5 women hugging him, all of them content. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. He had to stop getting so easily flustered. He had read those stupid magazines back in the convenience stores, but this was much worse than that. Still, his eyes gleamed. They didn't need clothes where they were going. So you are. You know, for such a rich guy, he's not as fat as I was expecting him to be. So, this is the man who nearly single-handedly controlled almost all of Konoha's organized crime. Naruto replied. Yugao refused, and she would kill anyone who told her otherwise. That she had felt a small smile appear on her face. She had not. She merely shook her head and headed for her target. She took out the videotape and placed it in one of the arms of the many courtesans who rested with the man. It took some time, and a lot of maneuvering, but Yugao finally managed to get the man out from the bed and his friends without waking him or them. She made sure to type him up, gag him, and she placed just a small vial of strong sleeping powder to his nose so he'd really have some long-lasting dreams. She then picked him up and placed him on her shoulder. He was noticeably heavier than he looked. Why do you even need this man? Konoha has been trying to pin him for crimes for years and, as you can tell, we're not exactly close. What's the benefit? Yugao asked. Oh, you'll see. That is if you make it home in one piece, Naruto replied. Yugao started moving towards the window. She glanced back. She did a quick once-over to make sure that her entire presence had been erased from the room. Wait, why did he say, if? Yugao gasped when she heard the door behind her burst open. Shingen-sama. It's just like the caller said. Intruder. We have an intruder. About 3 men shouted. Yugao sucked on her teeth before she jumped off the railing. She really didn't have time for this. She swore if her lord had something to do with this, then she was going to make him pay one way or the other. She frowned as she scaled down the outside wall. The shouts of disfigured screaming came into her ears. She landed on one of the outer posts. Why make me deliver a damn videotape if I'm supposed to be kidnapping the person who should be watching it? Yugao asked, and her feet began picking up speed. She charged down one of the corridors and she took a turn down a flight of stairs. However, she cursed when she saw at least 20 armed guards running up the stairs. "Oh, Anbu Nichan, who said the videotape was for watching?" Naruto asked. Yugao stiffened. Instantly, the building rumbled as a thunderous explosion impacted her ears. The purple-haired Anbu covered the body of her captive. No doubt flames had erupted from his bedroom. He was insane. Uzumaki Naruto had to be the most insane 10-year-old she had ever met, unwillingly. She quickly picked up the owner of the red dragon and dashed out one of the open windows which led to the outside, unlike the previous one which had led to a lower floor. She jumped out of the building and landed on one of the rooftops. When she turned around, it was as if a sea of flame passed her by. She watched the Red Dragon, one of the most powerful establishments in all of Konoha's underworld, fall to the ground in ruin, killing anyone else trapped inside. Truth be told, Naruto, watching the scene from Yugao's eyes, was not sure how he felt. This had been his first act of murder. Even now, he could see and hear people screaming as their charred corpses became naught but ash. He had been the instrumental cause of this. He watched people scream as shinobi rushed to the scene. The Tower of Flame, which once held the seat of pleasure for any and all members underneath its banner, was dying. This was his very first violent act against Konoha. He could feel Yugao's emotions. She seemed close to tears. He snorted. This was his first time killing. Perhaps he had not done it directly, but it had been him behind it all. He wondered what face he was making right then as he continued to watch. Now, did he feel happy doing this? He did not know, for he had never killed before. However, did he feel remorse over their deaths? Absolutely not. In fact, you can stop gawking now. We completed our objective. Get out of there, Naruto remarked. Yugao clenched her fists, but she agreed. She shook her head and made off with the owner of the high-quality brothel. She jumped across the rooftops, leaving the noise and chaos behind her. She wondered how many shinobi might lose their lives in the fire rescue. She wondered how many people had already lost their lives. In fact, her thoughts were so clouded that she only barely heard the sound of a kunai landing in front of her. She slowly stopped. Halt. Identify yourself. Where are you taking that man? An Anbu asked. If Yugao recalled correctly, then he was a newly promoted Anbu members. She growled, yet she did not speak. She had not been expecting such a fast response. Perhaps she should have, considering the fact that she too understood standard Anbu protocol. If she spoke, it would instantly give her away. I said identify yourself. Where are you taking this Konoha citizen? The Anbu asked, much more aggressively this time. Yugao was kind of surprised that the man didn't know it was her by her Anbu mask. Then again, he was new, so maybe it wasn't so out of the ordinary. For her sake, and for Hayate's sake, she couldn't speak. She dared not utter a sound. She could also see, just outside her periphery, at least 5 shinobi appearing over the horizon. No doubt this would draw them as well, if it already hadn't. Release him. Hands in the air. What is your code name and identification number? He asked. Yugao slowly dropped Takamura Shingen on the floor. She then held her hands up. She could feel her heart pounding. She was turning on her own comrades. No, she wasn't turning on them voluntarily. This was all Uzumaki Naruto's fault. He captured her in this sick game of revenge that he had upon the village. Yet, she could feel her life pool burning when she tried to resist the urge to strike. I restate, what is your company? NNNN name, Guashk. Time after time, Yugao found tonight to be a time of firsts. She had kidnapped a Konoha citizen, albeit a sleazy one, and she had stained her blade with the flesh of a Konoha Anbu. It had happened so fast that she hadn't felt like this since she had partaken in her first kill. The world seemed to be warping around her. She felt almost disillusioned. It was almost as if her entire belief of Konoha had come shattering down. She had taken the life of a Konoha comrade. Truth be told, Not even Naruto was expecting that. He was going to give her the order to smoke the rooftops, which would allow for an easier escape, but then he grinned. So, it looked like someone was starting to learn just as he had learned. Granted, this was probably just instinctual reactionary responses, but he had to bet that she had done it to appease him. Do not ask him why, but her blood told him this was so. Yugao released a pant. Her mind raced. Mission. She had a mission to do. She had to get moving. She had to get away from the area. Her legs felt like lead, but they kept moving. She leaned over and picked up her target. Seize her. Warn the village. Traitor. She heard. She started behind her and she noticed about 5 Jonin chasing after her. Yugao growled and picked out the smoke bombs from her pocket. She slammed them on the roof, which covered her for the moment. She then flung her body down and landed on the ground. The alarms seemed to be raised for them all. She held onto her captive. She ran through the alleyways of the village, knocking over homeless men and women, kicking out trash bags, and startling nearly every stray cat or dog she came across. Her many years of training were the only thing which kept her from flying into a panic state of where she should be going. She grabbed a manhole cover and pulled it open. She grabbed her captive and they both entered the sewers. Almost instantly, 10 shinobi appeared. You 3 go left. 3 go right. The 4 of us are going below. We already have eyes in the sky. Status. Capture, and kill if required. Move. The leader called. They agreed and went off in their separate directions. This left the squad of 4 alone. They pried open the cover and entered the sewers as well. The purple-haired Anbu released a breath. She grimaced. Carrying around a man larger than her was beginning to weigh on her body. She definitely needed more upper body strength. Okay, if I can take the passages which lead below, then I should be able to come out right above the brat's house. Hopefully I can take a shower, she said. She then began lugging the body with her. It didn't take her long at all to hear 4 splashes of water from the spot she had just left. She waited a moment. There was only silence. So they decided to speak silently to keep from echoing their location to her. She supposed she should have been proud at these Jonin and their efficiency, but right now it was just a tedious hardship that she was having to deal with. You could at least help me out, Yugao said with a frown, speaking to the one who was forcing her to do all of this. Naruto's eyes narrowed and his anger rose. He clenched his fist and he was treated to the scream from his charge when she dropped into the sewer water. She then clutched her head. You mean like you and Konoha helped me when I asked for it? You mean like when I pleaded for help when this village assaulted me? Throwing me in ice-cold water, electrocuting me, burning me with a branding iron, poisoning my food. What do you know about needing help? He hollered and she clenched her body in pain. Blood seeped from the pores of her skin, and it burned like a leaf under a candle. She even coughed the vital fluids into the sewer water. Its cruel taste laid upon her tongue. Naruto exhaled and released his hold over her. Now quit complaining. I don't have all night, the holder of the Kyuubi ordered. Yugao slowly rose to her feet and grabbed the body from the wall. Why yes, my lord. She replied, though the words sounded just as filthy as the sewer water in her mouth. Her anger rose when they passed her tongue, but, as she kept finding, she could do nothing about it. She kept walking. She dared not ask him for any more requests. Though, if only for a moment, she did regret asking him for help so casually. It should have made her pleased that she riled him so easily, but it did not. The Anbu was not sure why she did not desire to anger him further. She merely continued with her assignment, wisely keeping her thoughts to herself. Naruto kept to his own as well. Time seemed to pass by very slowly for Yugao. It had been nearly a half an hour and now she was in a series of tunnels which she had no idea led where. Forgive her, not too many of her assignments had her walking the filthy waters below Konoha. She exhaled. Next time, bring a map. She replied. Granted, she hoped there would be no more assignments, but hope seemed to be fleeting these days. Her mind took her to many things, but she tried to not think about the life she had just taken. It felt odd. She had taken the lives of many men and women as per the mission, but knowing she had directly stood against Konoha, her home, was nigh spirit-crushing. All of this, because the village had pushed one time too hard on the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Naturally, this was his fault, and she hated it deep down, but, if those were just some of the examples that he gave her then, she was not sure if she were in the place to judge. How could she be? It didn't mean she didn't hate him though. She just thought to look at it from another view since she had the Ga. Yugao cursed as she felt a kunai stab into her kneecap. She then felt another stab her right arm and then her back. Yugao nearly fell into the water, but she managed to hold her ground, though her legs were very shaky. Yugao turned her head and noticed one of the Jonin agents had caught up to her. She glanced down at the water and frowned. The red fluid had clearly left a trail leading to her body. Tisk. Blood must have dripped into the water when I spoke back to the Kyuubi container, Yugao thought to herself. The name's Uzumaki Naruto. I would suggest you learn it, Anbu Nichan. Okay. Mostly to herself. She had just enough time to dodge the sword strike which aimed to take her head off. She pulled her target out of the way as her assailant charged at her with ruthless proficiency. She blocked a punch with one of her legs, and she jumped over a sword slash at her legs. She backed up a step. To reach her blade she would have to drop her current captive. She was pretty sure her opponent had thought of that. Yugao held up a hand sign. Ninpo. Kemugakure no Jutsu, shinobi art. Hiding in smoke technique, Yugao said and blew a cloud of smoke from her lips. The Jonin scowled, but quickly jumped back as the smoke covered the tunnel. Yugao tried to make a run for the exit, but without hesitation, she dodged a swift swipe from the blade which had been close to cutting her neck from her shoulders. She landed in a more open channel. You will not escape, traitor. Let that civilian go. The Jonin replied. Yugao frowned harder behind her mask. What was she going to do? She was confident that she could easily fight a Jonin with one half of her body occupied, but that was only if there was no chance of backup coming. No doubt the person had already alerted his unit and they would be closing in soon. Plus, she was still bleeding. It wasn't just that either. She could feel her body slowing down. Most likely paralysis poison from the Yamanaka shop. I can feel my body tightening up. Yugao stammered back and nearly dropped the head of the red dragon. She thought she was going to fall over. However, neither she nor the Jonin were ready for a kunai with an explosive tag to stab into the wall. The man cursed as the explosion rocked the lower sewers. Yugao fell back into the water and grunted when she leaned up. Once she turned around, she nearly stiffened and Naruto instantly grinned. Both saw Hayate standing at the other end of the hall which led to Yugao's freedom. It wasn't hard to figure out when everyone was combing the streets. Given that nearly everyone in the vicinity hasn't seen you, then this was the only logical place that you could be. Unless you found out how to turn invisible, Hayate said. Yugao did not speak. Tears threatened to fall from her eyes. How she wished she could apologize. How she wished she could hug him. How she wished she could show him that she meant no harm, but she could not. She could feel her arm slowly reaching for her blade in order to cut him down. Please. Not to him. Please don't make me do it. I'll do what you ask, but please let him live. My lord, Yugao pleaded to the blonde watching. She squashed her pride and her anger. For the one she loved, she would do whatever was required of her. She begged that she not be the one to pass her lover from the physical plane. She knew he could hear her. Naruto tapped his finger on his table. Truth be told, Naruto was going to have Yugao attack Hayate as more of a power move. Kill. Maybe not. Maim. Probably. Yet, the idea didn't sit well with him. Currently, he was aware of his limitations. His control over Yugao wasn't as easy as it seemed. She didn't know it, but she could actually break free anytime she wanted. Naruto was actually surprised that he lasted this long with her still under him. She was an Anbu and he was an academy student. He wasn't stupid. If they had a test of will, then she would beat him, and pretty badly at that too. The only reason she didn't was because she didn't know she could, and he had no intention of informing her until he could contest her enough. If I make her kill Hayate-san, then that's gonna make her even angrier at me, and that anger might be enough for her to break from me. Tisk, it's a shame, but I guess that's my own fault for trying to subdue an Anbu without training with this power. Then again, I did say he would try and kill her under the council's orders. Ironic coming from me, but I don't need to rush yet. Naruto said to himself with a slow nod. Yugao felt the blood still. Her blade stopped just short of its sheath. She slowly placed it back inside. As much as she hated Naruto for this predicament, she gave him sincere thanks. Oh, don't thank me, Yugao Nichan. You're going to wish I hadn't saved him. Naruto said more to himself. His eyes gleamed in the darkness of his room. Come on, this way. We can get out before they regroup, he said to her. She did not deny him and, picking up her package, ran with him. Their steps faded into the sewers as they got away from the commotion of the other side of the village. About 10 minutes passed. Hayate raised up a manhole cover and surveyed the area. There was no one. Clear. Come out, Hayate said. Yugao climbed out and pulled her target with her. As soon as she did, she found a kunai to her back. She did not move. Yugao, I know you're in there somewhere. I still have my duties as a Konoha shinobi. I know you would understand, but I'm not as great as you think I am. Hayate said, a hard cough upon his lips. Yugao heard the clang of metal upon the ground. She looked back and saw his kunai on the dirt. Hayate had his back turned. Please, stay alive. We'll beat this, somehow, the Tokenbetsu Jonin replied. She said nothing. She wasn't able to. She picked up the body and vanished in a burst of speed. Hayate did not watch her leave. He felt like he would break down if he did. As much as he wanted to stop her, he did not want to see what this person would make her do to his comrades, which is why he cut off the escape. He did not wish to test his luck. Yugao arrived home, taking constant care to not alert anyone to her presence. She closed the door of Naruto's apartment and locked the door. She walked into his bedroom. Throw him on the bed. I'll get to him later, Naruto replied to her. She did as he ordered and dropped the blonde's interest on the bed. Even now, when she looked out of the windows, she could see the distant flames burning. Go take a bath. You smell, Naruto ordered. Yugao scowled. And whose fault was it that she smelled bad? She wanted to ask this, but she found herself moving without complaint. She stepped into the bathroom and ran the shower. Meanwhile, Naruto pushed back from his desk. Now, one might be asking, Naruto, how did you of all people create an explosive bomb inside a videotape? Also, why a videotape? No point in telling Yugao that I created that from the memories I saw of her making one when she bombed an Iwagakure facility. As for the videotape, well, now Hayate's the only one with a copy, Naruto said to himself and stretched his back. Truth be told, it wasn't hard to make these types of plans when Naruto just considered them to be more advanced pranks. Deadly pranks, yes, but the execution was pretty much the same. The village pariah jumped in his chair when he heard a crash from the bathroom and raced to the door. What are you doing in there? He asked. He could see her blood rushing into her muscles and he watched her muscles cramp to the point of pain. He frowned. Damn, he had forgotten she had been hit by the kunai from that Jonin. He held out his hand and started churning the blood in her body, willing it to relax the muscles. Yes, this was hard and the sweat which poured from his face proved it. In fact, this would have been damn near impossible if he hadn't gotten a crash course in human physiology from the Anbu in question. I'm going to have to get her out of there, aren't I? Naruto asked himself. He grumbled before he opened the door. He grabbed about 3 towels and covered them over her body. This was not the ending to the day he had planned. Once she was covered, He placed her on the bed and dragged his captive off into another part of the apartment far away from her. That was enough embarrassing things for him to do. He released a breath when he closed his room door. Never gonna live that one down, he thought, but he quickly cleared his mind and turned back to the matter at hand. He exited his hallway and entered his living room area where he had left his current victim. He could see the Shingen's blood flowing slowly through his body. No doubt because of the sleeping powder Yugao had used on him. Now, he had a living, breathing test subject to work on. He doubted this one would be waking up in a couple of hours. For about 3 hours, Naruto worked based off the knowledge he had acquired from Yugao's studies of the human body and what he was seeing in the man's blood flow. He tried many methods such as moving blood from one area to the next. He came close to killing his subject at least 7 times in those 3 hours, but he began making sketches, notes, and highlights in his notepad. He figured he was starting to understand even more the nature of his abilities. So I can channel my abilities through other people if I concentrate hard enough. Well, that bastard Iruka always did tell me I needed to work on my concentration, Naruto thought. He had discovered this when he had managed to command the man's blood to cover his arms, creating the same claws of red liquid the blonde had made. Unfortunately, he learned that until he actually partook of the blood, there was only so much he could do. His will, his desire to overcome the challenge in front of him was not strong enough to work on too many people. He had managed with the academy because it was a bunch of pathetic, juvenile, immature idiots, but Yugao he had only controlled because he caught her off guard. After the 3rd hour, he leaned back and released a tired sigh. Then again, it's not like I need to only control shinobi. Civilians should be much easier. They're all cowardly anyway, he thought. The only question was, while subduing Yugao, did he have enough blood and power to subdue a handful of civilians? He called for about 3 rats and they came in a hurry. He had a firm grasp on how to order vermin around while keeping an Anbu under lock, but people were a different matter. Well, they always called me crazy. Who am I to disagree with the masses? Might as well do something even crazier, he said, his fingers itching with anticipation. He went into his kitchen and brought back a knife. He stood before his prey. The blade shimmered in the moonlight. Here you are, in the house of the holder of the Kyubi, sleeping, dreaming of swimming in a pool of women and money. When you wake up, I wonder what kind of face you'll make. Well, it doesn't matter. It'll be the last face you make, he said. He took the blade and gently sliced Takamura's finger. He watched the blood quickly seep out. Naruto felt his own blood circulating and it slowly pierced his skin. The blonde then touched his blood with the man's own. Almost instantly, Takamura Shingen gasped in pain and his eyes blasted open. What? Where am I? I can't move, he said. He heard a chuckle. His eyes turned to the right. Of course you can't. It's much easier to do this without a struggle, don't you think? Naruto asked. Takamura stared into the red eyes of his captor, Uzumaki Naruto. Before he could scream, he felt immense pain circulate through his body. Yet, when he opened his mouth to scream, he found himself choking upon a familiar taste of blood. It filled his throat, keeping him from unleashing a full scream. Gwack why, oh you brat. You, really, Dadar, monster. Oh always knew it, he choked out, but Naruto only smirked at the comment. He watched as his blood flooded the Takamura's internal systems. True, it was a slow death, but Naruto had plenty of time. Plus, his servant was currently paralyzed in his bed. Not like she could interfere. Yeah, you're right, I am a monster. Sorry it took me so long to get it. I'll never make that same mistake again. You know how I know? Because you're going to help me, the blonde replied. Before Takamura could even ask, he upheaved a cough from his throat. Blood splattered from his mouth and onto the reaches of his chest. He noticed Naruto standing over him. Within his eyes was anger, but a distorted sense of satisfaction. Takamura tried to raise his other arm. Please, don't kill me. Gak, was wrong. I've me, one more chance. I'll leave you alone, he wheezed and begged. Naruto could see why. The blonde had already made his way to the man's heart and he had drowned the inner reaches of his arteries. Leave me alone. Why would I want that? I'm giving you what you wanted, remember? I'm giving you and Konoha the monster you always wanted me to be. Remember how much I begged. Remember how much I cried. Remember how much I suffered. Remember how much I asked for you guys to stop. Naruto asked. The man's eyes slowly rolled into the back of his head. Tendrils of the blood Naruto had used quickly spread themselves through his chest. Soon, he started to spasm, but he was still kept quiet. Please, I have a wife and son. They need me, he pleaded, but the holder of the Kyuubi had heard these thoughts. It seemed he had mingled enough blood for another mental connection. Oh, don't worry, you'll be leaving them in the most capable hands. Along with your business, your brothel empire, your connections, and your employers. You're leaving it all in capable hands. In fact, you're going to give it to me, Naruto said, a wide smile on his lips. I would never give anything to you, demon. You think a 10-year-old can control the entire underworld dynasty that I have prepared? The trials I've had to overcome. I'll never hand over. Takamura stopped, but he stilled when a blade exploded from his body. His head turned and he watched Naruto smile. The blonde leaned over him until his eyes were right in front of him. It's not about what you want. It's about what I'm taking. Just as you took away my love for this pathetic Inuzuka dog dung hole of a village. Your wife and son, I'm going to have fun teaching them their new roles. And you know the best part? You're gonna, too. Watch. All of it, Naruto said as the blade slowly retracted back into the man's body. His pupils turned red and his irises gained a black hue. Takamura slowly raised himself up. Phew, glad Yugao was paralyzed for that one or I might have been in trouble. Isn't that right, expendable pawn number 2? Naruto asked. The man stood to his feet and instantly dropped to his knees. Yes, my lord, he said. Soon, all of the man's memories began to fill Naruto's mind. Nothing was hidden from him. As if watching a long videotape, he scanned what he could and once he was finished he stared at the ceiling. Yes, now he had a base. Now he had place to call his own. Free from the public view, and, it was very popular. Naruto stared outside. He could see the smoldering remains of chaos that he had caused outside. You see, Gigi, when I did it your way I would still be staying in the decrepit apartment. But once I do it my way, I get the results I want. Still, I got some interesting out even the major clans are members. It also looks like Mizuki-sensei isn't so noble after all, he thought. He rose to his feet and turned out the lights to his apartment. Alright, Mizuki-sensei, you're next. It might take me a long time to do it, but I don't mind. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Besides, a student always needs a teacher to be a part of their educational growth, Naruto asserted. A dark laugh escaped his lips. It was time to go to bed. Tomorrow was the weekend, and he had so much to do. Yes, for the next 2 years, until he took his graduation exams, he would continue to build his powers and the forces which laid below. A shinobi always plans ahead, isn't that right, Gigi?